How's it going, everyone, and welcome to another episode of No Excuses on YouTube. Again, it'll normally be on btwproductions.com. We're coming back next week. So, also, the last episode is not out yet at the time of recording this episode, so we're sorry about that. There was a problem with the encoder, we think. The show No Excuses Making Excuses. Wonderful. Okay. We are your favorite show hosts, Ari
and Vaul, and we're here to bring you the latest news and commentary on the games industry. In theory, this mostly it's just complaining this week, actually. But
it's going to be a pretty angry week.
Yeah, I'm working on getting the previous week's episode up. It's on the workbench at present, because reasons. Basically, the problem was that I tried to cut corners, and then when I tried to uncut corners, because cutting corners didn't work, I made a mess, and so I had to go back to square one. So I'm getting there, though. It's most of the way done. It's just that I have a toaster of a computer, so encoding takes a long time, even when it does work. So I have to start it going at night, basically, and then check it again later in the morning, meaning that I get like one go per day. So it takes a long time even to make a mistake.
Oh dear.
But yeah. Who am I on? As far as Fern is concerned, Fern is all right. I talked to him the other day. He's going to be back before too long, but he got waylaid on the way back. He was hoping to be back today, but he did not make it. He got delayed, so he's still on the road. But he'll be back next week. That's the plan anyway. So, if you'd like to get involved with the show, obviously you can't do it live this week, but you can send us email at noexcusesvtw@gmail.com, or you can follow us on the Twitter at noexcusesvtw, or you can join our Discord channel and chat with us there at any time by going to our show page on vtwproductions.com and clicking on any of the recent links, which should have a link to the Discord in there. I haven't checked myself, but Fern assures me that is in fact the case.
And if you can't find it there, it's on the forums. We have a steady rate of like 2 to 3 posts a day. So if you want to come out that,
well, it would be substantially increased if I had more people to talk to.
That is true. I like the only things in there are when me and Vaul notice something and we type it in there. There's not much discussion going on right now. So if you want to come liven that up with the few people that are on there, that would be wonderful. We had a few pop in there, so I've seen a couple people say hey. We're getting people. We're getting in there. You get Abo to click on that one eventually. He'll talk in it.
Will he, though? Will he?
He'll post a meme in it that isn't really a meme, because he hates memes. Anyway, so we should probably get started with the week so we're not here absolutely all night.
Right. So you want me to go first? Okay, I'll go first. Let's see, what did I do? You know, my weeks these days mostly consist of WoW. This week was consisting largely of me wrestling with the appliances in my house, which all decided to fail at the same time. So I spent a great deal of time mopping the floor because water was going everywhere from the washing machine. I think I've got I've sorted at least 2 leaks, but I am not confident that there aren't several more than that in practice. It's just, yeah, I'm not very good at fixing appliances. I'm not very good with my hands, period. I just don't have the terror of meddling with things that prevents most people from fixing things, so I can often get things fixed. Like, I've fixed my PlayStation a number of times. And it's surprising how much of fixing things is just having the balls to crack it open and have a go. But,
yeah, just Google it. It's there. You can do it yourself 99.9% of the time.
Considering
save a lot of money.
Considering what you'll get charged by a tradesman, you're better off just at least attempting it, because it's pretty rare that a tradesman's not going to cost you the price of a new appliance. I don't know what it's like in your country, but it's like that here. To call out a tradesman, like, you might as well buy a new one, at least second hand, you know.
Yeah, it's like 60% of the retail price of the dumb thing if you make somebody fix it. And that's retail price at launch or whatever it is. So you don't want to do that here. If you're here and you want to have money, you learn to fix your own stuff. Although I know people that for some reason are just scared to open up their stuff and look at it for a second and see, oh, that connects to that and does that. It's not hard. Everything in there is a fairly linear system in most things. This connects to that and does that. I got to replace this because it looks like it's falling apart.
Well, there are a few things that you shouldn't. There are a few things that you shouldn't meddle with. Like, don't like you, back in the day, you should never attempt to try and fix a television, for instance. Because
Yeah, you don't want to break a
yeah,
CRT tubes are not fun. No,
yeah.
you don't want to do that.
Not only that, but they used to have really powerful capacitors in them, and
Oh,
you could get a lethal shock even if it wasn't plugged into the mains.
I was going to say, did they hold a charge? I wasn't sure.
Yeah,
Oh, I don't.
it was a hazardous prospect, and people were inclined to fix them because TVs used to be extraordinarily expensive devices. But yeah,
But nowadays, everything's pretty small, and silicon is and the insulator components for anything electrical has gotten much better. So anything in the next since the past 15 years is probably safe.
at any rate, so I spent a great deal of time doing that, but mostly, as usual, I spent my time on WoW. I'm trying to. It's like the end of the AP grind, which is to say, the point after which additional AP is irrelevant, is so very close that I keep thinking, if I just push a little bit more, I'll get there sooner, and I'll be able to put it down and stop, which is really what I'm going for, to be honest.
That's what they want you to do.
I know it's what they want me to do, but I don't know. The outcry is starting to get pretty loud, like in general terms. Like we're rapidly approaching Warlords of Draenor level dissatisfaction with the way the game is going, because people are just sick of it.
That's why I'm worried. Like, you're investing all this time into AP farming, and they do fix it. You're going to be the one that paid a higher price for less in the end in your time.
No, it doesn't work like that if you're a raider, because you're saving your raid time if you can push that boss over because you got more powerful sooner. Like
I suppose
you can't afford to. Well, the lower levels are, some of them anyway. Some of them are especially significant. Like I know I can see visible improvements in my character's performance as a result of some of it. So like from week to week, getting measurably stronger, it's worth doing. But in general terms, it's not very. It's beyond a certain point. It's almost an insult that they're even asking you to do it. Like it's hard to describe just how paltry it is, how pathetic the improvements are after that point. Like for me, it works out to, for the concordance ranks, work out to be about something around a 10-second proc, something like 1.1 times per minute, which gives you like 2% damage reduction.
That's a lot actually. So
no, it's
that's
not.
pretty good.
It's not good at all.
Oh wait,
it's awful.
Hang on.
It's a 10-second proc. A proc is useless to a tank.
I thought you said longer than 10 seconds.
No, it's 10 seconds of 2% additional damage reduction, which you can't control the timing of.
I thought you said 20 seconds. I'm like, it's not that bad.
No, it's worthless. It's worthless. It's not worthless in a mathematical sense. Like in any given fight, you will probably be able to say, here is a fixed value of damage that I did not take because I had my concordance proc. However, when you're raiding, you don't care about how much damage you take. You care about whether you wiped or not. And fundamentally, you're never going to be prevented from wiping based on the actions of a proc like that. And it scales 50 ranks, and it gets more powerful as you go. So if you actually did get 50 ranks, you would have an unbelievably powerful defensive proc, which would basically make you practically immortal for certain portions of the fight. However, someone told me the other day in raid that someone worked out that if you wanted to max your artifact weapon, you would have to acquire, making the assumption that you got ranks of artifact knowledge as soon as they were available and did all of your AP farming that was practical every day, it would take you 13 years to complete your artifact weapon. And I don't mean 13 years of your life, I mean 13 years of game time.
So it's literally an impossible quest. It cannot be done.
Yeah, and that was more or less intentional, because it was not like that for the previous version of the artifact weapons, and people completed it, and the people that completed it ended up building up tons of AP when they couldn't put it into any weapons because they'd finished them all, and they ended up having to balance around that, which meant it was impossible for people who weren't farming flat out, that type of thing. They basically dug themselves a big pit. So They're trying to avoid that this time, but that means that you've got the dissatisfying scenario of being unable to finish as opposed to required to finish.
How are y'all still sane? Y'all said I was insane when I preloaded my work so I could take time off work to marathon Persona 5 twice. But does not sound as crazy as chasing the endless carrot forever.
Well, that's why everybody's basically set their break point, after which they just aren't intending to do anything anymore. Like for me, I'm going to get concordance on my Brewmaster weapon, and then I'll build something else. I'll work on something else. I won't care about AP farming for Brewmaster anymore. I'll get the first rank of concordance, because the first rank is worth 2,000 versatility, and every rank after that's only worth 500, but costs exponentially more to get.
Yeah.
So I'll get that, and then I'll be done. Other people are saying, well, I will get the most important traits, and then stop there. We won't even push as far as concordance. We'll just stop. That's also a reasonable way of doing it. Some people are just not bothering to worry about it, period. They just think, oh, well, it's probably not game breaking. I'll just let it build up over time as I raid or do mythics or whatever it is that you want to do. So that's another way thing is doing it. But nobody is happy. That's the key thing. Nobody is happy about it, which is the key failure of Blizzard. No matter what tack you take, whether you are somebody who wants to finish it and is hell-bent on doing so, whether you're somebody who is being forced to abandon it without finishing it, no matter which take you use, people are not happy.
Yeah, even if you enjoy grinding. Yeah, even if you enjoy grinding, AP farming dies in how fun it is, like 3 months into the game at most. You're not going to want to keep doing it after that.
They do introduce new quests from time to time, but they wear thin pretty quickly as well.
Yeah, and you have to be optimal if you still have that mindset of, which a lot of people still do. Most of them at the guild still have the mindset, I have to be optimal all the time or I'm being a detriment. And because this is instilled in everybody's head, they're going to be stuck on this endless carrot run. And I'm like, don't know. I feel so bad for everybody playing. I'm glad I bailed out. I wish Fern was here because I was worried about this. I was worried this exact same thing would happen at some point, and I would feel bad for not grinding AP and be forced to grind AP forever. And so I overgrinded a lot of it, telling myself I'd slow down. And then when I saw it wasn't even making a dent at some point, and that was back before I even filled out more than 20-something traits, I'm just like, I can't do this. Well, especially, it may be Mythic rating. No, that's not happening.
Well, we're Mythic rating, but the official benchmark we set for the guild is try and get 1 rank per week, and then once you get concordance, don't worry about it anymore. That's all it will ask of you. Once you've gotten your rank for the week, you don't need to do any more farming. So
yeah, that seems mandatory for most guilds.
You need to set it up like that, or people will go absolutely off their rocker. Like I am the furthest off their rocker of the people in the guild, not because I have the most AP farm, but somebody got a mod which measured guild members' effort, and it turned out once Evian added up all of the quests that I had done twice as many world quests as the next person in the guild.
Did they get the guy with the most just do a whole lot of heroic pluses or whatever those are, the time runs?
The guy with the most is just like ground Mythic plus non-stop, basically. That's his favourite thing to do. Like he's sort of like really fortunate in that a way that pays off very heavily in AP is his favourite thing in the game, and so he just spams it constantly. So he's ahead because of that. Like world quests are not worth nearly as much, but I've done twice as many as the next person along.
Yeah. Oh no. It doesn't. How long have you daily quested? I don't even know if I should ask this.
I don't know. I don't have the mod. And it's across all of my characters. As I have twice as much as the next person across theirs. I'll see if I can find if there's an achievo to tell me. I'm pretty sure that there was one. I just don't know. No, I think I might have the top rank of it though. Let's have a look. Oh no, here we go. I have done on my main character. I've done 5,603 world quests.
So multiply that by, what are they on average? 5 minutes to complete if they're a not moderate one nowadays, or can you do it much faster?
It varies very dramatically. Like there's no good average for them. It would take a while to work out what that would be. But
they fell between like 3 and 9 minutes when I was playing.
Yeah, but sometimes you come across one that you can complete instantly because like there's a boss that's low on health and you can just tag him, that sort of thing. Yeah. And sometimes you end up standing there for 5 minutes just waiting for it to respawn, and they take 5 minutes killing it.
So, yeah. Oh dear, that's a lot of time. I'm not even going to pull out the calculator and do the multiplication.
It is most certainly a lot of time. There's no getting around that. It's a lot of time. I mean, I don't really think about it because what do most people do in their leisure time? They probably watch videos or something. Like what I do is I usually have like a lecture or something that I'll put on and listen to while I'm playing.
That's why I like grinding. I do the same thing. I'll turn on an audiobook or some kind of edutainment thing on YouTube and just sit there and run around whatever I'm doing that I don't have to pay attention to.
I don't know how many people do listen to lectures on psychology while playing games. I
do.
I can only pick up about a tenth of it. But Jordan Peterson's lectures are very, very interesting in a lot of ways. He's got a very coherent philosophy that frames his work, so it's not too wacky. But yeah, it's interesting to listen to. Although he's persona non grata with a lot of the world right now. If you don't know the story, he's a psychology professor with the University of Toronto, I think, and he publicly refused to capitulate when law was introduced in Canada mandating that everybody is forced to use any given person's preferred pronouns.
Oh.
Which is basically a law mandating you must speak the way the government says you do. And
yeah.
He objected very stridently to that. The idea that the government can mandate how you must speak did not particularly appeal to him. So, and that basically caused a huge problem, and he may well go to jail for it.
What?
This is what it's like if you don't have a written constitution protecting free speech.
Golly.
Australia has a similar problem, and their current prime minister is trying to get rid of those laws because they cause all sorts of problems. Like, they don't send you to jail, but there's some sort of laws about racial sensitivity that are really sort of like vaguely worded that a person with a mind to do so could, recklessly abuse.
Here's a more productive thing we can do with that daily time. Go get a shovel and meet me in Canada, and we need to rescue some people. Get at me, Trudeau. You ain't going to do anything.
But, yeah, so this is one of the reasons that so many people in the Commonwealth envy the United States, because it's sort of...
Not on the internet.
It's... Well, thinking people, then. It's because... while the home of like parliamentary democracy is the United Kingdom, there's a sort of a hidden premise there that the people that were involved would be British people with British values of the era at the time that the laws were put together. That when we relied on things like common law and the Magna Carta, and that was sufficient. Nobody had a written constitution because nobody thought you needed one, because everybody already knew that you weren't supposed to be a tyrant. But as time went on and the culture eroded, now suddenly it becomes an issue because the people who are in charge now are not the people who were in charge then. And back then, everybody thought it was obvious that nobody would ever be that evil.
Yeah, that's not the case anymore. I don't want to get too... Well, if we go too... We should probably pull out of this rabbit hole before we hit any deeper, or this will become a political episode.
Well, this is just a matter of history, that the culture has changed over time. So not having anything in writing has become a problem. So we've got these people who are going to go to jail because they won't use some made-up word as somebody's pronoun.
Yeah. The truth is taboo, dude. It'll be bad for us. It'll be bad for... Well, it's bad for them, too.
But, yeah, at any rate... So back to where nobody's happy about that situation. So since people are unhappy, Blizzard of course has to make everything worse. There was a huge cut up in the World of Warcraft community this week because Blizzard announced unilaterally that they were altering Mythic Plus. And now, for those that don't know, and Ari's probably among them, and not knowing the nuances of Mythic Plus, because I don't think you really did it very much, if at all.
I did like 4 tops.
Basically, in Mythic Plus, the scenario is that you'll go into a dungeon and you will put in what's called a keystone, which you earn from doing Mythic Plus 0, which is the base Mythic. which functions like an old school heroic, except a bit tougher. And you'll put the keystone in, and it will buff the creatures in the dungeon to the rank of the keystone, and then you try and complete that within a timer, and depending on how far under the time limit you get more chests, and each chest will contain, it has a chance to contain loot. Usually if you do it really, really fast, you can get up to 3 chests, and in the scenario where you 3 chest it, usually you get 6 pieces of loot randomly allocated to the group, which, that's another thing people are unhappy about, the random allocation. But laying that aside for the moment, since loot has always been a bit random, so that was the scenario. So you would get 1 chest which had loot in it, or 2 chests, or 3 chests, or you could fail. And if you failed and you didn't meet the timer at all, your keystone, you would open the chest, there'd be like 1 piece of loot, if any. I can't even remember if there was any when you failed. And you would deplete that keystone. And then depleting a keystone meant that you could not rank up that keystone, because normally if you completed it, you would get additional ranks added to it, and the dungeon that it referred to randomized until you for one rank for each of the chests that you got. And if you depleted it, you couldn't rank it up at all until you successfully completed it while it was depleted, and then it would be able to start ranking up again. Now, what they have introduced now, not yet, it's not going on to PTR, but what they are planning is they are going to change the depletion system so that instead of depleting, the keystone will rank down, and that's good. But unfortunately, that's not the only change they made. The other changes that they made is that no matter how long you take to do the dungeon, you will get 2 pieces of loot, but the best amount of loot that you can ever get from it is 3 pieces of loot, no matter how fast you do it.
Oh dear. Having the loot you get from a dungeon doesn't sound like a good idea, especially if it's somebody's like major pastime. I've heard that's quite a big community, is it?
Yeah, it's like super, super popular. It's largely responsible, I would say, for the fact that this expansion hasn't already gone the way of Warlords of Draenor for forcing people to grind so much, is that people like challenging themselves to do Mythic Plus. They'll get their team together and they'll work on it, and it's a really great way to gear alts because of the amount of loot that you can get. If you get a really strong team and they do a moderate keystone and they bring along somebody who's a bit undergeared, then they can get a huge amount of loot funneled to that character if they really focus on working on it.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
But
that's a good idea.
They've halved the amount of loot now, and their logic, if you want to call it that, is that, oh well, what's happening is that people aren't challenging themselves enough because they're doing moderate difficulty keystones when they're really powerful groups in order to try and get Warforged and Titanforged procs.
That's their own fault, and isn't gear a problem already anyway? Like, aren't y'all having problems because the dungeons are a little overtuned?
Well, no, it's not about the dungeons being overtuned. It's about the overtuning in raids was a problem because of artifact weapons, and it's pretty much that problem is mostly gone now because they changed the way artifact weapons were structured in the last patch, and they changed, added a bunch of traits, added a bunch of ranks, that kind of thing. They basically overhauled the artifact weapons, so that's not a problem anymore because they added extra power that way. The problem is that, generally speaking, Titan Forged is a bad thing, and it's a difficult bad thing to pass because it feels good. Like, it feels really good to get a powerful piece of Titan Forged gear. The problem is that collectively it's a really bad thing because it means that like, for instance, as a simple example, there's tier 19 gear, and in the next raid there'll be tier 20 gear, just like in every other pair of adjacent raids in World of Warcraft. The problem is the Titan forging cap moves as the expansion carries on. It rises. So if one of those tier bonuses, if the tier 19 tier bonus is strictly better than the tier 20 tier bonus, there is no reason not to grind old content until you get a really powerful Titan Forged set.
So you have to pack your raid up and drag them through the old raids as much as possible to get us, like, your important members and the people that will make the most use of them, preferably everybody, as much Titan Forged as possible on a set that's better. because it'll be equivalent to a non-Titan Forge piece on the new set and about item level thereabout.
Now there are two problems here. The first problem is in raids, which is fatigue, where you don't get rewards basically from moving to. If let's say you spend a lot of time super efficiently grinding heroic Nighthold, by the time you get to Mythic Nighthold, stuff won't be upgrades. Like we've only managed to get a few bosses down in Mythic Nighthold. We've been doing it a few weeks now. I got a piece of loot on a transmog roll yesterday.
Wow.
Because nobody wanted it. Because everybody had better pieces or Titan Forged pieces in that slot.
Or Titan Forged tier pieces that won't be able to be replaced. That's not good, Blizzard. They just made Titan Forged too powerful. If you want to give 1 or 2 item levels to give them a slight edge for being lucky, that would almost be acceptable. But what do they give you? Like they give you like a whole 2 ranks for it, don't they?
My record is a Titan Forged piece where the base item level was 850 and it Titan Forged to 910.
What?
That was on my warrior, I believe.
What?
My
I think
warriors,
the highest I've seen is plus 14.
My warrior's item level, well, that was in multiples of 5 now. They were in 6s and 7s in Warlords of Draenor. But
Let's see.
Yeah, and that's on my warrior. My warrior has an average item level of I think like 870 or 875. It's just got this one random item level 910 piece from a gigantic Titan Forge.
So you get 60 item levels from for the 850 tier. What is the tier above that? Like, what would that have for item levels?
The way it works is that it will roll to see if you get Titan Forged, and if you get Titan Forged, it'll roll. Well, it'll roll to see if you get Warforged. If you get it, it will roll again to see if you get Warforged, and up to plus 10 counts as Warforged. Titan Forged is above that. Every time it rolls, if you successfully get it, it will roll again, and it will just keep rolling until it fails.
So it's a never-ending lottery, effectively.
It does have a cap on it, but the cap is really high. Like, the cap is usually the best piece of gear available in the game right now, sort of thing.
It's close to mathematically impossible, I assume, to go and be able to hit everybody and plus whatever cap is Titan Forge, or even one person.
Well, you're not going to be able to fill.
That's got to be near impossible.
You're not going to be able to fill every slot with that, but it's enough to make up the difference between tiers and difficulty levels.
And this isn't individual luck either. This is luck for the whole guild rolling on it. So if your whole guild gets shafted, one dude doesn't get shafted, 20 dudes get shafted.
Generally speaking, we see at least one of the pieces that drops from every boss will have a Warforged or a Titan Forged or a gem slot or a tertiary stat or whatever. So we see a relatively high number of these things. Like if I look at my character now, head is Warforged, neck is not, but has a gem slot. Shoulders are not, but have a gem slot. My cloak is Titan Forged to 910, but it's only heroic and it's better than mythic. My chest is legendary. My wrists are Warforged. My hands are not, but they have a tertiary stat of leech. My belt is not. My legs are not. My boots are not. My ring is Warforged and has a gem slot. Other ring is legendary. I have a tertiary stat on the first trinket and a tertiary stat on the second trinket. So yeah, getting these bonuses is really, really common.
So taking fatigue out of the equation, thinking about a guild here, because I'm still thinking in guild terms. At what point, like how many tiers above a raid would it be worth it if you just were trying to not waste everyone's time? Like, what's a good way to put this? At what point would you stop doing the first raid that came out, Emerald Nightmare? How many raid tiers above that?
Well, we don't do it anymore because we've got limited raid time and we're going for progression. But
okay,
now it's easier if I move on to Mythic, to talking about Mythic Plus, because a lot of the same problems apply as far as Titan Forging loot goes. Now, the problem with the Titan Forging at present, as Blizzard is offended by it, is that people are doing, let's say that their gear is good enough for them to be doing plus 10 or plus 15 Mythic Plus, but they are doing like plus 6s and 7s and just hoping that because they can stomp that way faster, that they can by sheer numbers get better gear on average. Now that's the problem that Blizzard has cited, and number one that phenomenon is functionally indistinguishable from trying to gear other people. Like for running people through quickly to get them their gear level lifted quickly, which is, Blizzard is constantly talking about how, we want to include people by making it easy for them to catch up. This
is the opposite of that.
Yeah, they're basically nerfing their intention. But the other thing is that we are sort of obliged to do Mythic Plus if you want certain things. Namely, things like trinkets, because trinkets all have unique effects, right? Or for a given value of unique. And things like relics. Now, I have a huge problem with this because Brewmasters got screwed. We have a relic that, because they're, as I mentioned last week, they're completely brutalizing the Brewmaster spec for no reason in the next patch. And the new best in slot relic, because they're making the current best defensive one is getting destroyed, so we have to move to the next best. The new best in slot is only obtained like for each slot, because we have a storm slot, an iron slot, and a life slot. Each one of those, there is only one copy of that item in the game, and all of them are in Mythic Plus. There are none for 4 tiers of raids. So our only option to get that piece of gear is to spam Mythic Plus, and they are nerfing the loot.
So let's go with the randomization you have to go through here. Let's say it takes whatever Mythic plus 10. How many keystones would you need to upgrade? You need to upgrade. Like, I've seen them start at +2 before, but do they go higher than that?
They can start as low as +1, and the biggest step you can make is adding 3 ranks if you do it perfectly.
Okay. So on top of when you get into the range of the item levels where it would be an upgrade, you have to hope it rolls that dungeon you need when it ranks up. Can you re-roll that in any way to fix the RNG a bit?
Nope.
Joy. So then you go in there, and if you are MLG Swag Pro, and if you're at in-game, you probably know what you're doing, and you're going to be the people doing this, you're going to be pushing the timer pretty tight. So after working really hard at that, you have 6 chances to maybe get the piece of loot you want, if you're lucky. And then you have to keep going until you get it tightened for it if it's an important piece. Now,
you see, the thing that I mentioned before about how now your key doesn't deplete if you fail now comes into play. Because functionally, you either just complete it. Your options are to fail to complete it, to barely complete it and get 2 items, or to complete it quickly and get it 3 items. But what now becomes optimal is when you enter into the level range that is acceptable for the items that you want, then you suddenly get to this point where the optimal way to do the Mythic Plus is to get as far as the last boss and then wait until the timer expires, just about expires, to complete the dungeon, so that you only get 1 rank. Because if you skip 3 ranks, then it will get a lot harder.
Yeah.
And currently the gear improvement caps at +10.
Okay.
It's going to be moved to +15 when the next patch comes out. But basically there's no reason to do dungeons at any higher level than that other than bragging rights.
Okay.
So basically it becomes optimal then to not do it as fast as possible, but to slow right down to barely good enough so that you only get 1 additional rank, so you can basically spend more time in the gear range that is appropriate to you. And you have more opportunities to Titan Forge before you get into the range where the content is super difficult. So even the attempt to make things better has just created a new kind of unintentional gameplay.
Yeah, it's created a fairly easy cheese ball mechanic, but it still sounds way slower if you have to deplete your key or only go up 1 rank.
But the point of
then busting through 3 early levels dungeons to bust it up 3 ranks to +9 or whatever you need.
Yeah, well, that's what'll happen, right? People will do the normal thing and they'll spam it up, but then they'll start playing deliberately slowly so that they can spend more time in that level instead of leveling quickly, because now they need to, because they can't get a pile of loot. They now have to focus on making it as loot efficient as possible.
I can't play devil's advocate for it. It doesn't make any sense, because they're having problems catching people up right now. It's a huge issue. Everybody's talking about it. Even people that don't play WoW have heard about it. That don't have friends that play WoW in their immediate chat list have heard about it. It's been a huge problem. So they've introduced a system to make it harder for people to catch up quickly. I guess their logic is they predicted that little cheese ball thing and assumed that more runs would equate more loot, but that
But
doesn't make sense.
they're fundamentally assuming that they can do something to make people take lobies with them that they wouldn't otherwise. I'm sorry, you can't do that. The people who are doing lots of Mythic Pluses are mostly doing them in consistent groups. They have a Mythic Plus group that they like to run with, that they know well and are good at playing together. They're not going to go to Group Finder and pick up some random. Not unless they have to. Why would they?
Maybe Blizzard doesn't have friends.
What this boils down to ultimately is they're making a bunch of changes that punish the bulk of the player base in order to try and force people unsuccessfully to play their way. This is more you think you do but you don't logic at the fundamental level.
In a way, I'm glad they did it, because I had the passing thought in my head, if I played that game again, I could probably use Mythic Plus to get back up. My Druid's a class that hadn't been blown up yet. And it almost hit my head for a second, and now they're doing this. I'm like, yep, good, glad. Now I don't have to come back. Now there's no way for me to catch up.
Because, I mean, this is the closest thing they've ever had to a really good catch-up system, because it requires effort and skill to do it, but if you've got the effort and skill to do it, and at a high level, then you can gear somebody really quickly. But you need to have that effort and skill as a prerequisite. Now they've just taken that away and made it inefficient. You can still do it, but it'll take you twice as long at least. And you've got to use scummier methods as well to do it. You've got to fiddle the system. Like, cheesing the system should not be one of the intentions in the system design, as far as I'm concerned. If you end up in a place like that, you've done something wrong in your fundamental design.
If you're not going for an optimal outcome in something for any reason, seems like that system could use improvement.
Yeah, so there's been a big outcry over this, and I haven't covered some of the nuance. There are lots of little tricks and traps that people can use. Like, the thing is that for every method of play that Blizzard doesn't like, that they have tried to fix, they've created 2 new methods of exploiting the system and doing things that Blizzard doesn't want to do. They tried to fix something that wasn't broken, just like with the Brewmaster class that they're doing in this next patch. They're trying to fix something with which there is no problems, and they're creating problems in the process. They just don't seem to learn. It's because they want everything their way. This is another case of they have a vision for how we are supposed to play. They won't let us play the way we want to play. They have a vision, and that vision must be fulfilled.
This sounds like they would just see a video back in vanilla of somebody bouncing their way into the caverns of time and go put 50 invisible walls around it for no reason, even though it does nothing. Yeah, it wouldn't make that many people mad, but still.
At any rate, there are lots and lots and lots of people furious about this, because this was either their favourite way to play, or they don't do Mythic raiding, and this is the way they get gear upgrades, because you can get gear better than Mythic raids. Better than the base item level of Mythic Raids for Mythic Plus if you do it at a high level and get Warforged or Titan Forged. And frankly, some of the higher levels are quite insane in difficulty, so I think you deserve a reward for them. But yeah, the problem is that when you're giving out rewards like that, it suddenly you are riding that line between whether you are making Mythic Plus a mandatory activity or not.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a big problem, and they're making it into a bigger problem, and it need not be the case. Like, there was just nothing wrong with it before. Like, it's okay that they've taken out depletion. Depletion is actually kind of good. Like, the problem is that even the depletion thing adds another way of exploiting the system, because if depletion now drops it by a level, all that you're going to do is you're going to level it up to the point which is the maximum relevant, so plus 10 in this one and plus 15. You will finish it as quickly as you like, and then you will reset the dungeon. You'll basically fail deliberately by resetting the dungeon over and over until it drops back down to a level that you want to farm again, and then go back to it.
Oh, dear.
Rather than encouraging people to challenge themselves, which is what Blizzard thinks that they've done, they have in fact created a method so that people who are just trying to farm gear will never experience a challenge beyond what they want to.
I suppose you lose that. Well, there's still better gear at plus 18. We could keep going if we want to. We can try it.
There's no advantage to plus 18.
and you had to risk your keystone, but now you don't have to do that. You can just, we don't have to do all the lower level grinding if we just wait 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's basically, they've made a huge hash of it. There's virtually nobody who's happy with it. Like, I have been following the main feedback thread on the forums loosely. I haven't been paying a great deal of attention, but I've been watching it. It's last time I checked, it was up to around about 50 pages, and on each page there was usually about one comment, maybe half a comment that was positive about it, and everybody else was just raging. Because they made this like, this is your 5-man progression system, and this is the way you can catch up your friends, and this is the way you can, you know, have something to do during the off time outside of raids, and so on and so forth. But they've just made the system obtuse now, like, and I'm dreading the next patch because I don't particularly like Mythic Plus. I don't hate it, but I don't have any great love for it. So usually I do it only if somebody asks me to, and I don't begrudge doing it unless it's certain dungeons that I don't like. But generally speaking, I'll go along if I am asked, unless I'm busy with something else. And come the next patch, because Blizzard's destroying Brewmasters, I'm going to be forced in there, and I'll be forced in there with a dramatically reduced chance of getting the only item in the game that is relevant to me, and I have to do that 3 times in dungeons that people don't like. I'm not very well disposed to Blizzard right now.
Yeah. You should find a replacement.
It's just, it's awful. It's awful. I don't know why they're doing it. It doesn't make any sense. Like, I can't work out the person that is genuinely benefiting from this. If you look at a lobby, like, that nobody's going to take them along. It used to be that people would look for lobbies because you couldn't lower keys, so people would get to a level that was too difficult, and they'd want to get back into the range that they could work on and get gear from. So they would find somebody with a lower key and bring them into the group and help them out and level up their key into the range so they could do some dungeons while it was in range, and then once it got too high they would stop and they would find somebody else. So lobbies were getting into groups that way and effectively being carried, but Blizzard didn't want that. Apparently it's a huge problem if people get carried. So now they've adjusted a system so that people who have good groups can sit in the range they want and never move, never have to bring in anybody new, never have to worry about finding other people to play with. They just, you know, do what they want in their little island indefinitely. And Blizzard thinks that it has the opposite effect to what it actually does. They think that, oh, this is going to help. But, yeah.
Why don't you just go bump all the rewards from all the raid bosses previous to the current tier? Just slash them all in half. You only get 1 piece per boss.
Honestly, like, if they had just put in, like, it doesn't deplete anymore, so your key is not removed from the pool suddenly. Like, because what happens if your key depletes in practical terms is you have no friends. Like, everybody who knows you now denies that they ever met you. That's what happens if your key depletes. Because nobody wants to run a depleted key. You don't get anything for it. The only thing it does is reactivate the key. So running depleted keys doesn't happen. So having the key just get weaker is a good way of solving that problem. If they had announced that and then said, okay, so we're cutting the number of pieces of loot you get from a high-speed run down to 5, but everybody will get one, there would have been universal applause. Because in groups you can trade loot if you're on the same server. I think you can even trade outside server in certain group formats. I'm not sure, but so that would have been met with universal acclaim, because so everybody has a chance now to get loot, even if they're in a pug. We won't end up with these situations where people run 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 dungeons in a row and never see a piece of loot because they're unlucky, and we'll still be able to gear up our friends because we can just trade them the loot that we don't need. Like, that would be, that's all fine. Everybody's happy with that. But no, they slash the loot in half, and their excuse for this is that people are running more than we expected.
Oh my goodness. This has another effect. Blizzard must hate alts this expansion, because you ain't gearing any alts for the current tier.
Every time they announce something, they make it harder to get alts. So the other thing they announced recently was that you're going to have to do a grind quest to upgrade your legendaries to the new legendary tier.
Why do you play this game?
Like,
Why did any of you play this game?
they did this once before. See, this is the thing. They did this once before. The last time a new tier came out, they did the same thing. They made you do a grind quest to upgrade them. But back then, most people had between 1 and 3 legendaries. So it was a grind. It was an annoying grind. And everybody hated it. And everybody told Blizzard that they hate it and they want Blizzard to ever do this again. But they did it. Now, there are a lot of people who have like 8 legendaries. I must have close to 8 by now. I've never counted them because I don't use most of them. But you have 8 legendaries. And technically speaking, this favours alts. Because while, on one hand, if you've got multiple characters, you have a huge amount of grinding to do. Like, I've got legendaries on my Demon Hunter, I've got legendaries on my Warrior, I've got legendaries on my Paladin, and I've got a huge number of legendaries on my Monk. So if I want to level all these up, I'm going to have to do a huge amount of grinding, a spectacular amount of grinding. And I am really considering what I'm going to do about that. Which may or may not include quitting, because I'm sick of hearing about it, to be honest. But a newly created character, when they receive a legendary, it'll automatically be at that level.
So delete your monk.
The thing is that most people already have legendaries now. So yeah, it's just an obnoxious system that doesn't make a huge amount of sense, and people are mad about it for obvious reasons. That they've just been given another grind to do because it's as if we didn't already have enough of them.
So how big is this grind? Like my druid has 1 legendary on her at the base level.
We don't know yet, but it did take me a little while to level up my legendaries. Like, it took a few weeks to do.
Oh god. You probably played way more than anybody else doing it too.
It's possible. Like, if you run lots and if you spam Mythic Plus, you can usually do it faster. If I recall how it goes correctly.
So it would actually be more efficient for me just to make a new druid.
Given that you've probably got the bottom tier of legendary, it may in fact be so. Especially considering you got a really bad first legendary, right?
Mm-hmm. The worst one, unless they changed it.
So they have dramatically increased the rate at which you acquire your first legendary if you play regularly. Mm-hmm. So it probably would be more effective for you to start from scratch than to continue your character.
Well, I'd lose all the AP though, unfortunately. But that doesn't really matter because I can just buy a tome and catch up to what I wasted like 3 weeks of grinding.
Yep. And this is how obtuse it's gotten, because they keep adding in new grind systems, new ways to make it perverse and obnoxious. Like, nothing about this makes any sense. I can't work out what their objective is, or if they even have one anymore.
I think they're just tinkering stuff. Your game should never get to the point where it is more optimal to re-roll the same class to get loot. It should not be optimal for me to start over with a character because it will be better and try again. Well, I shouldn't have to trash a character. They're like, no, your character's trash. If I came back, I got to do it again.
The thing is, they've already seen this problem before, because this was the problem at launch. Like, because it was so hard to get legendaries at launch,
multi-boxing was huge.
Well, it's not just multi-boxing was huge, but that people in any guild above a certain level who are trying to push content quickly were just leveling a character, and if they happened to get a legendary they didn't want, they would just start over with a new character. They wouldn't try and wait for their next legendary because it took a lot longer to get your second one. I don't know if that's actually the case, but it's how it was understood at the time.
I never saw one. Many months after the first one.
The reality is that was the practice, is that people would go until they got their legendary, and if the legendary is bad, they'd roll a new character.
Oh yeah, it makes sense. It takes people, 4 days if they're really dedicated and don't have to work? 2 weeks at tops if they do have a job to hit max level?
But
yeah, it's definitely more efficient.
It's way, way faster than that now. Because if you do the invasions stuff, the invasion world quests are accessible before you get to max level. They're accessible as soon as you can get to that zone, which is, straight away, and everybody can fly now pretty much. And the invasion world quests, if you do an invasion happens something like every 18 hours or something. Some of them are in the middle of the night, so you can't do them, but generally speaking you'll see them relatively regularly. one of those, if you do all of the world quests, will give you most of a level, like 90% of a level, and you can complete that in a maybe 20 minutes.
So 12 hours, or no, I thought they were an hour long.
You can if you are the sort of person who would just get out of bed in the middle of the night to do world quests. Let's say you are. That's basically the equivalent of getting a bonus level every 18 hours or whatever it is.
So if you could hit what they said, there's 3 a day, right?
It works out. No, it works out. And there are 4 every 3 days.
Okay, so yeah, you'd get about 1.5 a day. So yeah,
And
guess you could.
it's like 20-30 minutes of your time.
Yeah, it'd work if you're a chunk sleeper. Sleep for 4 hours in chunks.
But yeah, it's very very quick to level up. So you are arriving at the situation now where people would rather roll a new character, and that's coming back. We thought it was going to die out because they added in really decent bad luck protection after a while, but no. The Blizzard is intent on making the same mistakes over and over and over. Just once isn't enough.
I mean, that should tell you all you need to know. They're not learning.
I don't understand why they're not learning. It's not a complicated idea, that's for sure. But
I mean, narcissism and self-indulgence is all the rage nowadays. It's what the world does.
well, I mean, I've completely lost faith in their class development, as I've said multiple times now. Like I don't think that they know what they're doing. It's basically I roll the dice and I hope for a crit. Like that's what I do, because the class development team has proven, I think they have proven to a standard of beyond reasonable doubt, that they are not competent, that they don't understand the classes, that they have no intention of learning. Because
They don't seem to have a clue, from what I've read.
well, I mean, the dead giveaway, and pretty much every brewmaster has acknowledged this now, is when Celestalon decided that brewmasters, despite being powerful and successful, did not meet his vision. The change that he suggested was to cap stagger at 100%. And what that would mean, functionally, is that brewmasters could take about 3 hits and then they would be as tough as rogues from that point on in the fight, more or less.
Oh, joy.
And the fact that he suggested that at all as a reasonable idea, and he wasn't spitballing either, he was saying we're going to implement this, until, there was a massive chorus of objection, that proves that he doesn't understand the class. And that in fact he has never tanked anything, much less with a brewmaster.
On top of not playing their game, they don't even understand what they're doing.
And the fact that this guy is leading the class development team, that shows to me that there is something seriously wrong at Blizzard.
At what point has an MMO ever been in the control of the developers? The players always find their own way to play the game. It's almost never as the developer intended to do a boss or a dungeon. There's always some cheesy thing somewhere. You can't stamp them all out.
Well,
and if something's working, there's no reason to change it anyway.
In the old version of WoW, that was their philosophy, that they would build the game and people would do as they pleased with it. Emergent gameplay. Nowadays, it's all about trying to make people who are their customers conform to their grand vision. And their grand vision is, done with orange crayon on a piece of newsprint.
Do they even have one? Their grand vision is an idea they have floating in their head somewhere. I think I kind of know how it wants to work.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Their grand vision is done in crayon. Like, it's not clear, it's not coherent, it doesn't make sense, and they don't have a very high resolution idea of what they want it to look like. They're just trying to make people do what they want. They're treating the customers like their minions.
They're treating them as playtesters, it sounds like, and they're never going to get to finish it because they'll run out of time. They can only implement so many patches.
It's very silly, but the Blizzard earnings call came out, and they positively stated that Warlords of Draenor, the Legion is doing better than Warlords of Draenor was at this point in the expansion. And let me tell you, that's not actually much of a compliment. That's like saying that it is probably better to get fed actual food than to have to forage in the garbage. Like, yeah, it probably is. Certainly. Like, there are things to do in Legion. There are lots of things to do in Legion. There are lots of things that you can do. However, and that's an improvement over Warlords, where there was literally nothing to do. However, nothing here is structured in such a way that makes people happy. That's the problem. Nothing makes anybody happy.
It's not even good real food. It's like a bad $2 TV dinner.
Yeah, you don't get food poisoning. Like that's about the only the only advantage. It's very grim, and it's mainly grim because nobody feels like they're making much progress. And I think that really what needs to happen is somebody needs to break their pride, not bend it. We've seen bending, and what happens with bending is that they always unbend in the end, and we're starting to see that with Brewmasters. Like over the course of the last few weeks, Celestalon has suggested idea after idea after idea that he wants to inflict on them, and they've been shouted down one after the other, and we're almost at the point where he's not suggesting things anymore.
I would just love to see all of y'all just mass hiatus, just mass strike of Brewmasters.
It's happened for classes before. It's more or less the case for Blood Death Knights now, because Blood Death Knights are actually like I could fix Blood Death Knights for them in an afternoon if they gave me the tools
most
to do
of us
it.
could,
but because the problem is very, very simple, and the tools to fix it are already in the game. They just haven't used them for whatever reason. But Blood Death Knights basically don't exist for the simple fact that they are very, very good until they get insta-gibbed, and there's no way to recover because they are purely reactive. And so there are almost no Blood Death Knights in progression anymore. Like they've disappeared. But Blizzard doesn't care. They haven't fixed it. They just aren't really interested. That's the problem there. But what we've seen with Brewmasters is that Celestalon suggested all of these mountain of changes that he wanted to make, and he put them all on PTR, and almost all of them have been removed. Like there has been a almost complete rollback has been achieved by people railing at him for being a stupid idiot. So it's not entirely without hope that we might get somewhere in the end. The problem is that there's no reason to believe that it will stay that way, because he's got this way of convincing himself when the players do his job for him, which is what happened to get Brewmaster to where it is now, as in it's a powerful, effective, and interesting class. He convinces himself that it was his idea when things are finally fixed. It's actually sort of cringy to look at, but he genuinely thinks that he is some kind of luminary designer, and that he's come up with all these great ideas when all of the things that actually worked are things that players have substituted for his design.
And unless y'all got some really vocal members in the Brewmaster community, he's going to keep that cred.
Oh, we do. The problem is that he's delusional, so there's only so much you can do with that. But
nobody else is going to believe he didn't design it outside of the Brewmaster community. He probably doesn't even know about it, unless a few people, the WoW players do. But nobody's going to in the business industry just look like, oh, he did well at Draenor at this point. He introduced all these ideas. They're not going to be able to find it in a quick Google search that he actually cribbed all the ideas from the forums.
Yeah, it's at any rate, you can convince them that they are wrong. However, it won't stick. Like, I think that the problem is that there's never been anything catastrophic enough happen to get people's attention. The last time something catastrophic happened was Warlords of Draenor's subscription numbers, where they halved.
Yeah, you got to chop off the bar graph, not at the top. You need to cut that somewhere around the middle. Like, the population needs to significantly drop for a class designer to understand it, or a game for the game designers to understand it.
At any rate, I'm hopeful things can still be saved, but what needs to happen is Celestalon needs to bow to the superior knowledge of people who actually play the game. And he's shown very small but positive signs that he is capable of doing that. It's just we've had to walk a very tough road to get there. And it's not just him, though. It's like all these other people. It's not him that's responsible for screwing up Mythic Plus. But I mean, apparently, I haven't watched it myself, but in a recent developer interview, there's some people are saying that there is the closest thing that they've ever seen to an outright capitulation from a lead developer, that they screwed everything up, and that they've made a huge mess, and they need to fix it. Because they really have. But I don't know what specifically they are referring to, and I'm sure it's extremely veiled because of Blizzard's pride, but it's positive if at least they're grinding slowly to the conclusion that they are not perfect. Because up until now, there's been every indication that they thought that they were.
Whatever happened to balancing being a few percent tweaks to a few abilities?
No, you got to use a sledgehammer to do it.
Just you might need to go up a couple percent to bring the Death Knights up. Just give them like maybe 5% is what you need. Try that. If that's not enough, give them 5 more.
Like,
I'm survivability.
I'm really upset like the changes to Brewmaster if they go live, even though we've managed to tone them right back down from the class destroyers that we once had. Like I've got 900, 905, 905 relics in my artifact weapon now, and I was really happy to get that. However, they're destroying that trait to the point that it's crap now if the PTR goes live. So I'll have to farm up new ones. So what will functionally happen to me is, unless I wade into Mythic Plus and get really, really lucky there, probably what will happen is I will be downgrading my relic, my artifact weapon, at least all of the progress that I made in this raid tier. I will have to undo, most likely, because I won't be able to consistently get high level relics. I have to take what I can get because it's rare. There's only one of each in the game, and they're all in Mythic Plus, which has now had the loot reduced. So all of the progress I made raising my weapon, I'm going to have to undo, because they hit the class with a sledgehammer.
5% Blizz at a time at most. You used to do 3% back in vanilla, and that was enough. I like that type of balancing. It doesn't break the game.
I mean, I've ranted on about that for a long time, and I will probably continue to do so, because it's like every week Blizzard manages to come up with a new asinine idea to fix something that isn't broken, despite the fact that the game is riddled with things that are broken and do need attention. Like the aforementioned Blood Death Knights. Just put an intern on it. He'll be able to work it out. It's like solving 2 plus 2. Death Knights get insta-jibbed by mechanics that do more damage than their health, and they have no defenses for it. That's what happens. Fix it.
Just put him in front of a playtester that he can patch the game every few tries he goes into a dungeon. Just bump up the numbers every time something doesn't work. It's not that hard. Just stick him in front of a dummy that whacks on him at the appropriate raid tier and see how long he lives. If it's not acceptable, patch the game and crank it up and test it. And look, the intern did it.
Yeah, it's just, I don't understand the way they're allocating their resources. Like they did get one thing right, more or less right, not entirely right, and that there is more to do than in Warlords of Draenor. Because what happened in Warlords of Draenor is that, you know, people would sit in their garrison, they would log on once per day, and they would do their garrison missions, and then they would log off. I almost missed that because of the sheer quantity of mindless grind that I have to do now.
Think of the amount of time that you've invested into the game that could have been spent on other things. If it was garrisons, then you would have been much happier. Think of the quality of life that it's taken from you to do all these dailies.
I know you're trying to get me to quit.
I'm okay if you stick with it for this expansion because you got an obligation, but I'm serious. Everybody needs to quit that game.
Well, I mean, I nearly got a chance before. Like, I had a brief period of holiday when I hit max rank on my artifact weapon, but then they reset the way artifact weapons work, so I had to go back to work. But I think I'm at like 49, rank 49 on my weapon. I think something like rank 52, then I can basically stop. And I can actually play other video games.
There's a whole persona out there that's actually good.
Well, I can't afford the console to play it on, so that's a moot point.
Everyone's effectively the same.
No, it's not.
Load screens are 1 second longer. It's the only difference.
1 second's too long. I have a mania for not wanting to buy an inferior version of something. Unless it's phone, because I don't care about phones.
Oh dear. So yeah, we've been going on that for we don't start at a normal time, so I don't have a clock going.
This is merely an expression of the depth of my antipathy for Blizzard right now.
Yeah. Oh dear.
The thing is, the thing that really got on people's nerves is that I can't remember who it was. I think it was Law. Kept replying to the thread with clarifications about the way the new Mythic Plus would work, and at no point addressed anybody's concerns. Just acted as if they weren't there.
Yeah. I don't know, man. At this point, it's just Blizzard is bad. Blizzard is bad. Blizzard is bad. Blizzard is bad. And I see it too. I believe you. I don't know what I can add to it because I don't play WoW mostly. But
you need to appreciate the depth of their bad. Because the thing is that it makes me feel bad in a way because of the amount of Blizzard is bad that I have said over the course of the past 12 years or whatever that WoW has been running. Like, the sort of bad that they engage in now is a totally different magnitude to the bad that they indulged in the past. Because they don't have the excuse of an experience anymore, for one thing. And there are more cleverer players engaged in the process to help them get their design right. And the only real change that they have made is their attitude, and their attitude is that they are always right.
Yeah. We used to have patches where everybody was happy, you know. It used to be the occasional one, at least, where nobody would get mad, pretty much, except for that, you know, weird guy in the corner who needs to be mad at everything.
Yeah.
And we'll see that no more.
There's nothing really to be done about that. We'll just have to wait and see. They have listened before on things. Like, they have done so in addition to making more mistakes and using more arrogance in this expansion than they have in anyone in the past. They have also listened more times. So at least it's working at both sides of the equation.
So maybe you'll crawl up from TV dinner to takeout next expansion?
Because, I mean, they did change the requirements for flying and that kind of thing, because those requirements required you to get up in the middle of the night and that sort of thing. Like, it's just... They have listened to things. They have rolled back things that people told them, look, this is bad. The problem is that everybody is scared by the fact that they keep suggesting things that are bad on the face. Because you sort of expect the people whose job it is to design games to be better than the layperson at doing it. But that is blatantly not the case.
I expect a class designer to be at least as competent as a moderate level top-end player of that class. Like, he has to know what he's doing.
Yeah, well.
I expect a game designer to actually have played their game. And know how much free time people have, because that's a pretty easy equation. An idiot can do that.
Anyway.
Oh, okay, so next topic. Do you have anything else?
Did I do anything else of significance other than wrestle with the dryer and the washing machine this week? I don't think I really did. There's nothing much more to talk about on the anime front. Nothing has diverged in a significant fashion from the vector that it was on, I don't think. Most of them have been going pretty well. If they had potential to go well, they're going pretty well. If they didn't have potential to go well, they're grotting around just as bad as ever. I would comment on what one. There was one that I didn't comment on last week, called Sakura Quest, which is really, really good, and I love it. It's
Oh no, you're happy about something.
Well,
this doesn't happen.
It's fairly banal in essence. I don't think I've talked about it at any great length on the show. I have mentioned it before, but it's basically just about a girl who's gone out to the sticks, never intending to actually go out to the sticks, but accidentally got appointed the PR sort of queen of their fake independent republic that they use to promote their city. And the city is basically one of those cities that is gradually sort of, sinking into the urban sprawl mire, in that everybody's gathering to the cities and everybody's leaving smaller cities in outlying country regions. You know that phenomenon.
Yeah.
And so that city was trying to do a PR effort, and she accidentally got hired because her name was similar to somebody else's to the job, and she hates the country. She ran off to the city to study and failed to get a job and was just on the verge of having to go home, and she got offered this job, so she went to do it. She thought it was a day thing. It was a year thing. But I think it's by the same sort of team that did Shirobako, if you watched that. I didn't watch the whole thing. I watched part of it. But
I think it did.
It's that one was the one about making anime, and it goes into
Oh yeah, I did watch that. It was really good.
Yeah, this is a similar sort of tone to it, but it's really funny. I think it's not a comedy, but it's really funny nonetheless. But it's funny in a sort of a situational comedy way, as opposed to gags. It's not about gags per se, but it's a very entertaining show. The characters are probably the best example of show don't tell I've seen in quite some time as far as describing characters. Nobody ever monologues about what a character is like at any point.
I see. Oh, this is okay. I see. I've seen this before. Oh, it's done by the guy that did he did Ergo Proxy and Full Metal Alchemist, the first series.
Some people have an axe to grind against the first series of Full Metal Alchemist.
Some people love it though. I don't think it's that bad. He did Razafon too for the people that like the Evangelion style stuff.
Razafon made me cringe.
Let's see. He did Soul Eater, which a lot of people like. I've heard a lot more positive than negative about it, although I didn't like it very much. He did Samurai Champloo. That's pretty. His list is pretty long, bunch of mediocre stuff. Nothing bad.
At any rate, it's a series that I think is very good. That's not really genre material. It doesn't rely on any particularly egregiously overused tropes or anything like that. It's a pretty solid series all round, and I've really enjoyed watching it. It's not exciting in the conventional sense, but I think it's just the realism of the character writing, and it's got a lot of sort of thoughts and ideas are held by the characters that are very easy to identify with, in the sense of things like particularly I'm moving from education to getting a job very shortly, so it's got a sort of a bit of extra cachet for me, but it has a lot of things associated with it, like the idea of, you know, where you're going to work, what it's like trying to get a job, and then other more abstract ideas like the concept a lot of people have that of, you know, if you go to the big city, there is tons of opportunity and you'll make it big there. You don't want to be anywhere near the country, that kind of thing. You know, very very human modern ideas that most people have, if not thought of, at least know about. So the characters are very believable as legitimate modern people, and as I said, they never talk about what each other is like, which is, I think, the major flaw with most character-based stories these days, is that they will explain characters directly instead of showing them acting in context.
Yeah. There's a threshold. I don't know much about the show at all, so it's hard to comment, but I've seen some pictures, and that's about it. God, I'm losing my voice. Don't do that.
It's something that I think is worth. I think it's very accessible and worth watching for most people. It doesn't have wacky Japanese stuff. It doesn't have giant robots. It doesn't have anything like that. It has an awful lot of chupacabras in it, though, which I don't know why that keeps cropping up in anime, but
There's always some weird monster that's the current fad, or some weird culture.
That was exactly it, though. Like weird monsters were a fad, and that's why in the original attempt to promote the city, they tried to use chupacabras.
Oh, I see.
It was not very successful, let's just say. But it's funny watching the whole thing be explained, and you see all the various paraphernalia around the place where they tried to use chupacabras as a promotional method.
I see. Oh. So yeah, I might take a look at it, but a bunch of the past few seasons have just not have been. I'll look at the season list again later. So I might add it to the possibly good list if I remember to copy it.
I think that is one of the best of this season. There aren't really many of those. Recreators is good still. It hasn't, you know, it's slowed down a bit, but it hasn't fallen off or anything like that. The first arc of Alice in Zoroku was actually really good. It's just closed now. The Sakura Quest that I just mentioned is good, but there aren't that many others besides that are really remarkable in any way. It's a very lean season on top quality stuff, I think.
I see. Oh dear. So yeah, the past few seasons have not been very good either. I can't think of a show off the top of my head that's been good. I think there's been one or two, but nothing that really sticks and stays there.
I think that there's reaching an exhaustion, saturation sort of point that we're getting to at this stage. Like, I think that what is happening in a sense is too much anime is being made.
There's also you and me as much as we like to joke about it, we are getting older, so it's harder to write something that will impact on us because we've seen it all before.
I don't even think it's that, because if you do look at the amount that are being made, the amount of anime that is being made is vastly higher than it used to be. Not just the stuff that we're seeing, but the stuff being made, period. There is vastly more of it, and they are leaning more and more heavily on whatever material they can get their hands on to adapt. And alarmingly often, that's really tacky light novels.
As handshakers.
I wish handshakers didn't exist. It makes me sad to even think about. But yeah,
What is your DNA twister?
Ugh, ugh. I don't want a DNA twister. I don't ever want a
I
DNA
still think
twister.
I win. I don't either, but I still think I win on the bad quotient.
Well, you can have it. You can have it.
At this point, I have to wear it as a badge of pride. I survived that. I should get a T-shirt.
This is a case of either you have to laugh or you have to cry. There's no middle ground. But yeah, it's a lean season. I think the seasons are going to continue to be lean. Like, I think that they're sort of, the industry is spreading itself too far, so you end up with nasty looking things like handshakers where they've blown a huge amount of budget on something silly and irrelevant.
Yeah.
And instead of making, a few decent shows, they make a zillion incredibly mediocre or bad shows. There's another show, like in the vein of what I was talking about last week with Iramanga Sensei, which is a show that might be good but is actually bad because it's about a guy's little sister. Is what is it called? Akashic Record of Bastard Magical Instructor. It's really bad. It's really, really, really bad. But
is this the one you messaged me about that was copying things from a certain other universe we like?
Yeah. They've lifted several concepts whole cloth out of Type Moon. Like their thaumaturgical system is the same, and there are a few other things from Type Moon actually as well that they've been pilfered straight out of there. But generally speaking, it's a very, very bad show in a lot of ways. But I can see like the skeleton of a competent show written in there. It's just completely coated in stupidity and the worst school uniforms ever designed.
That's because if you strip all that away, fill out the system, and put good characters in there, you get Fate.
That could be, but yeah, it's just a very bad show. But I keep seeing this, right? Like the Clockwork World one is also, it's a show that could have been good but was bad because it was lazy. And
yeah, everybody's got a good concept.
Well, no, not everybody has a good concept. There are some really terrible concepts out there. There are lots of quite bad shows like that are just bad from the ground up, or mediocre from the ground up. But there are also quite a number of them that have, in some cases they've got a competent course concept. In some cases, like in Iramanga Sensei, the writer is actually good, but the core concept is bad because the core concept is about a guy who's too fond of his little sister, or vice versa. I can't remember which way they're actually playing for this time. Yeah, it's the theme of this season is missed potential.
It's been this running theme for a while. Like, you can, if you just check all the boxes, you can have a good show. You can do pretty much anything and have a good show as long as you have, animation can save a show, music can save a show. Well, music's the hardest thing to save a show. Good writing can save a show. Crispin Freeman can save a show. But there ain't a whole lot of things you can do if just you're spreading yourself too thin. You can't check all the boxes.
Yeah.
You can't even check one of the boxes. They get yellow stamps instead of green ones.
I guess you can't have everything you want. But
Heaven's Feel movies are coming. Have faith.
The anime this season, Grand Blue Fantasy, has to be infringing on some copyright. I don't know what it is, but it is the most Final Fantasy anime that I've ever seen, including the Final Fantasy anime. It's just there's there must be connected to Squaresoft somehow. I don't know how, but like the armor of the guy that they show a guy at the end of the most recent episode that I watched who's like clearly a boss character type thing, like he's in charge of the Imperial troops, but he looks exactly like a leader of the Imperial army from Final Fantasy 14 or Final Fantasy 12. Like
Yeah, I
that
remember what
very
they
sort
look
of
like.
very ornate gothic looking armor with a
Oh, I see.
very big enclosed helmet with horns sort of thing. You know the
Oh,
sort of
like the judges from 12. Yeah,
yeah
now I remember. It
yeah
took a while
like
to come back. I
they
hadn't played them
they
forever.
they look exactly like this guy looks exactly like that, or it might be a woman. I think it's a woman. I'm not 100% sure, but it's exactly like that, exactly to the
Oh,
finest
yeah.
detail. So I don't know how. I'm gonna have to look this up at some point because there's no way that this could not be infringing on copyright somehow.
I don't see it, dude. I don't see any relation to the Tactics team or Squeenix at all. It's just Aniplex and a bunch of producers I've never heard of.
But it's
Yeah,
originally a mobile game.
I see.
The original material is a mobile game by Cygames.
The
But
directors for this thing don't even have pictures on my anime list. That's how bad they are and how new they are.
the story is very banal. It's not bad by any stretch of the imagination, but it is. Well, it's a Final Fantasy game. Like it's got all the usual things. It's got Bahamut.
Is the spaceship like in 12 too? Spoilers?
He looks like classic Bahamut.
I guess I shouldn't spoil any 12 while we're making comparisons because they're doing an HD remake soon. It's coming out pretty soon here.
He looks like classic Bahamut, and they've had other like this is blatantly a summon type characters in there as well that they've come up against.
Well, summons are an exclusive to Final Fantasy. Plenty of games, including one I'll be talking about, have them.
But they look exactly like they would look if they appeared in a Final Fantasy game.
Oh, I see.
But yeah, it's an okay show. The art is interesting as far as like the drawing style is concerned. It's a bit different.
I'm not a big fan of the coloring, like usual. That's the big sticking point. It looks very muted.
It is quite muted, but I think it works reasonably well in context because of the way higher average detail.
I see. The pictures I'm looking at don't have that. They're just screen caps from the episode at a random point. So,
well, there are parts which are pretty plain, but like there's for instance, of course, it's because I keep saying it's Final Fantasy the anime. There's an airship, right, and it's the central mechanism of travel for the party, we'll call them, because they're clearly a party, and it's a very highly detailed, highly animated contraption.
if we go through all Final Fantasies and all Tales games for all the spaceships they have, will we find one that matches?
I don't know if they go to space. Like, this isn't Tales.
At least Tales doesn't always go to space in a rocket or an airship. Sometimes they get shot there.
I finished watching Tales of Zestiria because they delayed the final episode, and I can't say I was especially pleased about the ending.
Nobody is.
It just sort of ends.
I promise Berseria is better. I promise Berseria is way better.
And then he decided to copy his compadres and other franchises and become a door for a while.
Pretty much. The Berseria is way better. Just go play that if you want. If you like that universe, its concepts are actually really good, and they explain them way better in Berseria, and it's a much better game with a much better story.
I don't mind the concepts. I like the concepts well enough, but I actually kind of liked some of the characters, and it's sort of sad that they didn't really use them at all to do anything.
Some of them are referenced in the first game. The bad ones are cut out. All the human characters are cut out, obviously, in Berseria. But if you like the what do you call it? The spirits. I forget what they're called. Seraphs. If you like them, quite a few of them are referenced. You don't get to see all but one of them, I think, though.
Yeah, it's just that is like the most disappointing ending I've seen in a while. It just sort of ends like there's no resolution to anything at all, really. It's just like, oh, I guess I'll seal him for a while and then I'll come back in the distant epilogue with no clear indication of just how much time has passed, and then it will be over. Like, it's just thoroughly unsatisfying in every way. It doesn't really have a climax even. It just ends.
The big bad is so bad. Does he show up more than twice in the anime? Because that's all he shows up in the game. He shows up after he's been hyped up forever, like 3/4 the way into the game. He kicks your butt in a boss fight, and you never see him again until the very last boss fight.
In the anime, you see him once relatively early on, and he appears sort of like in the distance, overseeing a war that has started, and then you see him You don't really see him again until he's basically come to taunt you into the last battle, and then you go and fight. They go and fight him in the last battle. You mainly see his barely clad lackey wandering about.
Yeah, he takes so long to show up in the game. Edna's response is every player's response. Kitty! We didn't know he was going to look like a cat. Never showed up. Heard his name, that's it. Didn't see what he did. So 3/4 into the game, we're fighting a cat? Really?
You can't you don't see him turn into a cat until the very, very, very last part of the last fight against him. And,
he's a cat the whole time in the game.
He's mostly in a human form or a semi-human form with a lot of hair in the most of his early appearances. So
we don't get a human appearance in the game except in a flashback that's super blurry. That's all we see of it. You only see the cat form.
He mostly looks like a fairly buff regular human most of the time. But yeah, it's overall like the story managed to convince me it was going somewhere for quite a long time and then didn't go anywhere.
It's like, yeah, they build a whole lot of stuff up and then that climax.
That's just so bad.
It's a classic example of how an ending can ruin a story. Like, it was okay before, and then the ending happens.
So
and everything falls apart.
I thought Tales of Grace was a bit janky, and I thought that Tales of Xillia was a bit janky, but if Tales of Zestiria is anything like the anime version, it makes Tales of Xillia look like a masterwork by comparison.
There's a reason people have said we're on a steady slide down until Berseria starting at Graces. And we were really worried. I'm almost convinced the franchise would have hit rock bottom if Berseria hadn't been good, if they hadn't pulled it out of their butt. So they really were hitting rock bottom with Zestiria. The game is bad. It's really slow. Everything's super spread out. And you build up all this tension forever, and you forget the plot because it's so choppy. Nothing's paced correctly. And mostly because it jumps around so much, the anime is much more concise with its plot lines. You're not trying to do two things at once and jumping between them all the time. But I've heard by all accounts the anime is way better than the game. The game is not good. The game is easily one of the worst Tales games.
The anime is probably better by measure of the fact that it's over quicker and it's visually lavish.
Like, it is quite pretty.
It's very nice to look at, and I will certainly grant it that. But the story is different though in a lot of ways than the game from what I've heard. Like, because I wanted to see something about one of the characters, so I went to the page on TV Tropes, and it talks about the relative to the game and to the anime version. And there's a lot of very core differences between the things that happen. Like, for instance, Alicia and
Nuka House.
Alicia and Rose can both armatize with seraphs, and Rose has a huge amount of trouble doing it, as well as Alicia has a huge amount of trouble doing it. But I've heard in the game Alicia can't and Rose has no trouble, so it's sort of in the middle.
In the game, Alicia has trouble at first. Alicia's a Mary Sue that can do it perfectly as soon as she gets it, as soon as she gets the ability.
No, Rose is, isn't it?
No, yeah, it is Rose. Sorry, I got the names mixed up. But yeah, Alicia has trouble with it, and Rose can do it instantly as soon as she gets the ability to, with no trouble. And they try to hand wave it, but it's a really bad hand.
No, both of them go through a great deal of suffering in the process. Like, it's obviously extremely painful for them to do.
Yeah. The whole game is built around having your characters armatized the whole time. So they treat it, once you're at that point in the game, you're basically never going to be unarmatized, ever, for any reason, unless you're dumb.
In the anime, they treat it, but for everybody but the shepherd, it's treated as like cast from hit points.
Yeah.
Like you use it if you use it if you need to do something which is way beyond your capacity.
Yeah, no, Rose is the biggest Mary Sue of all time. She can act perfect with it, with Dazelle. Just because Dazelle hung out with her forever, she's okay with it all the time. That's their hand wave. It's really bad. Nobody likes Rose. Everybody hates Rose. Everybody was And there's a good reason for that too. They marketed Alicia as being the main female lead in the game, and she was going to stick with you the whole game. And she just up and leaves, and Rose replaces her, and all the conflict with Alicia gets put on the back burner until the DLC at the end of the game.
They often they do that. They do that in the series as well to a certain extent, but it's like Alicia leaves because she's got responsibilities, but the fact is that Sarai and Rose basically worry about her the entire time, and she's worrying about them. And you get to see what she's doing. You get to see her basically invade her own city and that type of thing. Like you get to see a lot of what she is doing and why it's important for her to leave. And then eventually she comes back when her city is stabilized.
Yeah, she never comes back until the Saray's already walled himself
But
in the DLC.
She's a vastly more endearing character than Rose is, in my opinion.
And it's because Rose is one of my staple characters for the Mary Sue. Just thinking of Mary Sue, since it's so fresh in my head, she's the first thing that comes up from the game. It's really bad. There was some serious overriding with that. And we don't see her invade her town, Alicia just, we don't see anything. It's all in text boxes in a flashback. They just explain it in brain farting and exposition dumps in the DLC. We don't know what she did except for those. I don't remember a dang thing she was doing.
Oh well. So I mean, it's sounding an awful lot to me like the anime is in fact better. I think the weakness of the anime is probably
Quite a bit so.
The syrups don't get a lot of characterization time because they're trying to do everything so quickly that you often feel like everybody's just rushing from place to place. But
yeah, this way they don't get it in the game either. Edna gets more characterization from her. They're talking about her in Berseria. That's how bad the characterization is in the game. They don't get it either. Lila hums and haws and doesn't tell you anything. That's her only defining character trait. The only cool one is Zavid.
He shows up like 5 minutes to the end of the story, sort of thing, in the anime.
He's there with you for the whole last third of the game.
You meet him very early on, but then he wanders off and he actually runs into Alicia again long before he runs into the rest of them.
Yeah, he does that in the game too. That's similar. But yeah, he shows up way earlier when you're walking on the last leg of the journey. Oh dear. Just play Berseria. You've had the worst experience with Tales games I can possibly think of.
I started
the
with
absolute
Graces,
worst.
and then I went to Zilia.
You went from Graces, which had the best combat system of all of them. It was easily the most fun to play. And
it was also really hard.
It was still good. And then you went to Zilia, which had not as good of a combat system and whatever story. Grace's story was quite bad, but it had no redeeming qualities. It was super mediocre. Zilia 2, I liked it, but I don't think anybody else does. It's about the same as Zilia. And then we had Zestiria.
At least I played Jude's storyline instead of
Mila's.
So I actually have the middle part of the game.
Yeah, that whole part where Mila says I'm going on vacation for a little bit. I'm probably going to be back later because that's how narratives work. You know, I don't know there's a solo fight with Alvin if I didn't look it up.
And it's one of the most important parts of the story.
Yep, had to Google it. I'm so glad I YouTubed it when I got to that point in the game because I saw it's blatantly obvious what happens.
That's like the sort of emotional crescendo of the entire story. Is that event?
And it would have been
it
way
just
better.
disappears from the story if you play Mila.
You just get a bunch of text boxes of her talking to Maxwell, and you get dumped back in the party. Oh, okay. Sure. I wonder what Jude's was like, since this is probably the big difference here. Oh, wait. He has the best boss in the game. And, oh, he has the best moments in the game here. This actually is all the best story parts. Why did I pick that Mila button? All because I wanted to see both routes through because they both already picked Jude. And I probably would have picked her anyway. I'm so mad.
Okay, so now I've had my spiel of being mad, and you've had your spiel of being mad. Is it time to take a break yet?
Probably, yes. I'm so sorry you had to start Tales like this. I'll just get you a list of all the good ones. I think I've done that before. Just play Resuria. It's way better. It redeems the series. Seriously, it's really good. Okay, we're going to take a break, folks, because we don't want to have a super huge file crash on us while we're recording. So we'll be back. And we're back. So, we left off getting mad at Tales of Zestiria. Vaul, do you have anything else?
No, we'll leave it there. I've netted on far more than I wanted to. I need to really stop complaining about WoW so much on the show, because basically there's an infinite well of things to complain about, so if I let it get out of hand, I'll never stop.
Yeah. Save it for the weeks where there's absolutely nothing in here. We can cover a bunch of it at once.
The main reason I got so caught up in it this week was because everybody in WoW is talking about the Mythic Plus changes right now. Like, all of the major channels are doing it. Like, people, like, apparently even that idiot, well, lots of people like him. I think he's a bit of a doofus. Asmongold's talking about it, Preacher's talking about it, Fat Boss is talking about it, everybody's talking about it.
Oh, I remember when I was subscribed to those YouTube channels. Anyway, before we get back on WoW. Okay, so while more diverse, I don't have anything good this week to say, so it's only going to get worse from here. Let me pull it up. Where did I put it? Okay. So, big thing this week. At work, I have minions now, so I sent them off to do things to get me time to chew through a DS game. I'll do this one first, since Yooka-Laylee ties into something.
Doesn't having minions mean you have to train people?
That's very hard when I don't just give them homework. I don't know. I'm the poster child for do it yourself and figure it out yourself. I don't know how to teach people. I'm the absolute worst teacher. Never ask me to teach people. I don't know how to do it. Don't have a clue.
More to the point, you'll make up new names for things instead of using the actual ones.
It makes sense in my head, but that's because I teach myself everything. So it works fine for me, but I know that doesn't work for everybody. But that also means I can't teach people anyway because I didn't learn the way that they learn. So I'm very bad at it. Hence, I got through high school fine, and I only went like 70 days out of 180, maybe, my senior year.
Nobody follow Ari's example. He's a bad child.
Go to school, kids. It's good for you. I would have done better if I'd have been in school, even if I taught myself everything. Let's see. So I sent the minions off to go make a form or whatever. And yes, I had both of them do the same task before you ask. It was one form, and I had them make it together because they don't know how to use Word. That's the kind of minions I'm working with. And it wasn't hard. I'm just like, make a few tables, and I'd come look at it every once in a while.
Well, to be fair, I wrote an entire thesis, and I can barely use Word.
So yeah, I would come point out what they need to fix and show them what tools to use and go sit back down and come back an hour later. So that is me teaching minions. So I sent the minions off, and I do endearingly call them my minions. And they are now doing the brunt of the grunt work for me. I go tell them to replace something that's broken that they can easily swap out with something that's not broken that we have parts for, like, a printer cartridge or something. I send them to go do that, and I don't have to do that anymore. So, or I need them to go update somebody's computer, which is nice. It means I have some time to sit down and do stuff. It means I effectively work and get paid for doing nothing, which is awesome. So I had some time to boot up an emulator because the work PC is not very good. I own this game on the DS before I go further, so I was intending to play it, but I only have a small 3DS right now. I don't have an XL, and I don't want to play anything on that tiny screen. So this is a normal DS game, not a 3DS game. So anybody that was around when the first game came out, turn of the century is when this happened, right when the Game Boy Advance came out.
Why do you have to say it like that? It makes me feel so old.
Because we're old, dude. We have to accept it.
No, I refuse. I'm going to go into
sooner we
denial.
accept. If we accept it, we can overcome it somehow. We can get better and adjust with our age.
The march of time is traditionally not something you can overcome with effort.
You can get better and act better for your age, though. If we're broken at 60 and trying to do handstands, I think our arms are going to fall off. It'd be better to acknowledge that we're 60. Where was it? Turn of the century. So there was a fairly popular cult RPG that came out that has since been long forgotten. It had a really good initial sales run, though, and that was Golden Sun. And I loved that series as a kid. It was basically just another really good JRPG at the time before we got drowned in them. It was right on the tail end of that. It was right at the end of the golden age of JRPGs. And it was really good. And it was so long that they actually had to put a to be continued and gave you a password to carry over your save to the next game when it came out. He only got half the story on the first cartridge because it wouldn't fit on the disc or on the cartridge if they put both games in there. So they split it up into 2 games, so Golden Sun and Golden Sun: The Lost Age, and it told a really cool story, and the world was very fleshed out, and everything looked really good, and it was really fun. I had fond memories of that series. I would like it to continue. I gave up a while ago because it took until 2010 for them to announce a DS title for it, and by then I had lost interest. So I had picked it up on the cheap at some point and was going to get around to it, but I really didn't feel like it at the time. There was other games I was interested in, I think, and I just wasn't at the top of my priority list because it had been 10 years since the last game. And they had said before, the 2 games we played on the GBA are basically a prequel, and this is going to be the real series, and you need to get hyped for it. So I scooped it, held on to it, and it took until 7 years after the game came out, because it came out in 2010. And this is the Golden Sun Dark Dawn. And I finally got around to playing it. Did you ever play the Golden Sun games? Not many people I know have.
I never had a handheld back then.
Okay, yeah, not many people I know have. It apparently sold fairly well. I've heard reports it sold bad, too, and I tend to believe that because the fan base is pretty cult. Although the wiki is absolutely well filled out, better than any other wiki I've seen.
It was at the time, one of the most anticipated titles on the Advance, and it did a huge amount of sales relative to the people who would be interested. Like, the fact is that people who wanted to play JRPGs and who also owned handhelds as a niche market, but pretty much everybody in that category bought it.
Yeah, and they were exceptionally long as well. Like I said, they had to put it on 2 GBA carts. This thing was 2 sets of 35 hours. That's a lot for a handheld. So if it did sell well, that's good relative to what it was. But Camelot, for some reason, went to go making Mario Sports, and they didn't make the Dark Dawn for a while. So we get our sequel finally, right?
Mario Sports?
Yeah, that's where wonderful Camelot went. They don't make JRPGs anymore. They tried again with this game, though, and we're going to talk about how they messed it up.
Oh,
so right off the bat, we boot up the game, and I remember the first games, and quickly looking around the internet to see what the game's like, I understand it's very similar, almost copy-pasta from the last games, which means there's a whole lot of annoying crap to do if you want to play the game. This includes gem farming, which are little elemental spirits you can go collect that are necessary to increase your class, and you have to get all of them to get to the secret boss. I said I'm not doing that. So I hacked them all into the game as I came up to their point in the story. It was an emulator after all. Another point is the 1 point you have to level grind takes quite a while. The game's fairly easy except for that point. Looked it up, said nope, hack my levels up. Just skip that grind.
I never really understood that. How there's something that occurs in a lot of games, that there's often just a part of the game where they abandon the level curve entirely and just say, well, go farm mobs for 3-4 hours and then come back.
Like, they said they're fixing that in 12.
Like they had the same thing in the first Neptunia game, and it's not as bad in the revised version, but in the original version apparently it was really abusive. Like, there's this point where you're going to get there at, let's say, level 20, but you don't have a prayer of bringing the boss down before like level 40. So you've just got to go into a dungeon and kill things forever.
Yeah, a lot of games are like that. I think this comes from adjusting the curve, and the very last change they make is somewhere in the middle of the game usually, and that's usually the spot where you find this thing. So while they're adjusting the level curve to hammer out these issues as you go through the game, the last change will inevitably shift the curve, so there's one bad spot somewhere. So they get stuck in the last release with this one area somewhere in the game where adjusting and tuning for the rest of the curve just didn't stick right. The only game I've seen do the curve right is Persona 5. It is perfect. Easily the best example of a curve. So, mostly because there's no way to cheese it, and it doesn't feel artificial. But anyway, so hacked all the things and then increased my class as I went. I didn't want to be too overpowered. I wanted to do everything at level. So effectively, I put stuff in the... I didn't side quest, effectively. If it was a go fetch quest that doesn't have any story, I just auto-complete it. And the point was to get through this game because I just wanted to see the story, and I didn't want to watch on YouTube because it's on a DS, and that is terrible. So I basically chewed through the whole story fighting only the bosses and the trash leading up to them and their associated dungeon. That was all I did. So the first game, the first two, I'll call them one game because they're effectively one game even though they're 2 games. The first game had a cool mechanic where the dungeons were very much so puzzle-based more than grinding through monsters, and it's not like Zelda puzzles, like shoot the thing on the wall. It's your party members are assigned a different element, and no character in the game breaks this rule. Even the final boss has one element assigned to them, and they have fire, earth, wind, and water, named after the associated gods of the Roman pantheon. So you each person has special abilities that can do things to the environment in the dungeon. Like, for example, Earth Adepts in the first game, they're called Adepts. That's what our magic users are called. They can turn into sand, and they can go underneath things. And your Water Adepts can cause pillars of ice to rise out of puddles of water and stuff. And you can use Move to telekinetically move platforms around, including the ice pillars you raised and stuff like that. And the puzzles got really creative. Those are still here. That's fun. The combat is not. Because it's undertuned. Way too undertuned, except for that one point in the game. So, in these games, there are things called summons, and they're the first thing everybody tries to abuse when they play this game because they're stupid powerful. Summons in the original game, what's happened is health bars have gone down in total, but summon power has stayed effectively the same, using about the same stat curve as the last game. So summons are super busted, because they're guaranteed to, on top of their base damage, do a percentage of the boss's HP. Up to 24% with the strongest one. And multiple characters can summon the same summon one after the other. So summon rushing a boss can kill him before he has a chance to make a move.
That doesn't sound very bossish.
They got around it in the last game by having the boss's phase be split into different health bars so that you could not do this. They apparently forgot. So I elected not to do that, but then I figured out your magic spell's called the worst portmanteau you've ever heard, Synergy. I know, it's bad. Psychic energy, yay. So your Synergy spells are way stronger in this game, especially the in-combat ones. They do way more damage. Before, it was a tough choice to decide whether to summon or to go do a few turns of spells, but in this game, you can just mash that plasma button as much as you want, and you're going to kill the whole enemy group before they even get to move, if you're even one level above them, or maybe even at their level in some cases. And you're going to overlevel them, even if you do no side quests. It's just going to happen, except for that one part in the middle. So the combat, I would love to comment on it, but it just doesn't matter, because you're never going to die. So everything about it is effectively irrelevant. So it's really sad. So let's see. After that, there is the story of the game, and this is where it gets really bad. The last game was your fairly standard Golden Age JRPG affair, but it was a really good one. I think so. It's kind of hard to explain without explaining the concept of how the world works, and that's very complicated. It's a very lore-heavy series, and the mechanics of how the world works is what's interesting about the game, but there's so many of them, I don't want to go into it. But it resolved them very well over the course of 2 games, and it explained everything, and you were happy with it. And at the very end of the game, you re-release a force called Alchemy that stops the world from eroding because flat Earth. That's the only one you need to know. In this game, that's in the world, and that's causing problems. Like, they told us was going to happen, so that's a fine setup. The problem is your heroes don't fix that. Your heroes, in fact, make it worse. The whole game. You're serving the villains. The villains effectively show up because you're teenagers. You're like 16 years old or something in this with your party. This isn't Persona 4 or Persona 2 Eternal Punishment where everybody is 23. It's a Golden Age game. So these guys just show up, including the big bad from the last game who was ambiguously left alive, but immediately he shows up with a bad mask on. You're like, okay, he lived. You didn't even fight him, though.
When you say bad mask, are we talking like tuxedo mask?
Like, you can see half of his face still. In random spots. It's a bad mask.
Like generic Gundam villain.
Yeah, like, doesn't cover his hair or anything. You can see the big blue hair that reaches his ankles and his posture and his body shape, everything, and half of his face. So you know who it is. Even though they waste a good, first quarter of the game building up who was that guy. And I'm like, oh, shut up. You have the guy that knows him right there. He's the smart one. You had a smart scholar that couldn't cast magic with you that followed you everywhere in the last few games. And he comes back because what happened to the last game made the characters that started the event live longer, is how they justify it, and how the old characters are all still there, including the 90-year-old man. So he's with you still, and he doesn't recognize this guy. So they waste the first quarter of the game wondering who that is, even though everybody that's played the first 2 games is just like, it's Alex. It's Alex. It's Alex. Oh, look, it's Alex. Do we get to fight him this time? No, of course you don't. Instead, his subordinates manipulate you the whole time into activating a bunch of magical spots around the world that you spend the rest of the game doing to cover the world in evil darkness.
Why you got to do this, Ari? Why you got to cover the world in evil darkness?
Because they said they needed to, and if I didn't do it, they'd do something dumb, like kill a kid. So instead, we of course do it, and cities die because of it. Wonderful, kids, you've done a great job. All you had to do was go get a rock feather to fix a kite you broke, so that your parents could go observe what's happening on a mountain. And there's some catastrophic event centered around a mountain. It's the whole thing, and one of your party members breaks the thing they use to observe around it and fly, so you have to go fight a monster. And this is how you get stuck on your adventure, because it's your fault. You broke that thing. So you never get to see the resolution of this, because you mess everything up. You start a whole new problem unrelated to the thing you started in the game to fix. And after you get that feather, you don't get to send it back to the end of the game. By then, bad stuff's happening, and it's all your fault. So,
well, I mean, realistically, this is in the era of JRPGs where everybody was a teenager. Maybe they're just dumb kids.
It is possible. They could be realistic 14-year-olds, and I would believe it because they're rock dumb. Every single one of them. Even the smart one is an idiot. In the previous game, yeah, they were kids, but you had the magic Windseer ones who were super smart at least. And you had the old guy with you to stop the plot from hitting the rails because the teenagers couldn't figure it out. But it worked pretty well. It was a good dynamic. In this game, they want these kids to be kids, I guess, because they act like idiots. And it drives me nuts. They just do what the villains say, and they don't have a clue what's going on. They have to ask themselves 50 times a dungeon, what's going on? Is this going on? Oh, yeah, this is going on. Oh, yeah, this is going... Shut up, kids. We figured this out 3 cutscenes ago. It's one of those games. So it's just horribly paced, even if you're just chewing through the main story. And then you get to the end of the game, and you fix the problem you caused on your way to get the fix for the problem that you messed up earlier. And you don't even get to resolve it, because, yeah, you fixed the second problem you messed up that blew up a bunch of towns. Good job fixing it, hero. So... you go home, like, oh, we got the rock feather now. You can go survey the tower. Oh, wait, bad stuff's happening at the mountain. Oh, look, that's a giant vortex. Oh, look, it says the end. And for now, that is the end. Congratulations, you're into the Golden Sun series as you've done goofed everything up.
What, just ends there?
Yeah, there was supposed to be a sequel, but the game sold terribly because the story was so bad and got reviewed so quickly.
Huh.
Like, the dungeons are fine, but 10 years is a lot for a Golden Age JRPG. They usually don't sell well nowadays, even if you expand them or do a sequel to them now. If you suddenly drop a sequel to it or a remake, people don't buy it. It's not as popular as it used to be.
Well, I suppose there are other things now, and I think that probably people will accept one of like 3 things, and them being Final Fantasy, Tales, or Persona, and there's really nothing else outside.
Those are the big 3, but yeah, people don't want to try out the independent JRPGs. I'm in the minority.
Well, I haven't really taken the time to play any of them, but I've heard that both the Trails in the Sky and Trails of Cold Steel franchises are both good.
I haven't played those
exceptionally
specifically.
good.
I've heard a lot of good things about them too. I haven't tried them specifically, but I have heard good things about them. So I can't remember any off the top of my head. I hate having to come up with examples for something very broad off the top of my head because I've played a lot of them, but I don't remember any of the names. I'm terrible at that. So yeah, don't play. Just end the story at Lost Age, and you'll have a good experience. If you are interested in Golden Sun at all, don't play Dark Dawn. It's a complete waste of time. If you like the puzzles and that's your favorite part and you really love them that much, yeah, sure, the dungeons have those, and you can go do what I did and mod your way through just to do those. But the rest of the game's terrible. Including the final boss.
Sorry, folks. Sounds like we're having technical difficulties again, so I will try and reconnect to Skype. Apologies for the amount of racket that is likely to be made by Skype. Okay, let's see if we can get this to work here.
Oh dear.
Are we back? Happened? We connected again? Good.
Are we connected again?
Yes.
Did I start roboting super hard?
No, you just cut off.
Okay, that's how it's been lagging for me lately with you. You'll cut for 2 seconds, then I'll hear it again, and it'll all catch up. So that's why I keep running into you occasionally.
We're still recording, and I'm not going to bother to edit it out, so...
Oh, dear. So, yes. Skype has new ways of screwing with us, by the way. So we have to figure out how they keep messing up their netcode. So, yeah. That's all I have to say about that game. I'm not happy about it at all. I was really hoping for something better, because I really liked that series. And looking back and rereading the story of the first games on the wiki, yeah, it was really good. I liked it. It's a good technical world. Not as big as like the Nasuverse, but it still has enough rules to make it good, and exploring it's fun. But yeah, they just don't do good with the narrative in that game. So I'm sad. So the other game, this ain't going to get better. This is actually going to get worse, if you can believe it. So even worse than disappointing me with a sequel to a game I liked from my childhood is a spiritual successor to a game I liked from my childhood. I mentioned I played this last week, but I platinumed it because the platinum's really easy. You just got to complete every world. And there's only 5 worlds in this game, and that's Yooka-Laylee. And I went through every world. I don't remember a single one except for the ones I hated for the puzzles. There was none I liked enough to keep in my head for getting the jiggies. I'm just going to call them Banjo-Kazooie turns because I don't want to call them pages and cages.
Because they're shameful. Shameful.
Yeah, you collect Ghost Riders, which are your Genjos now. They straight crubbed everything from Banjo-Kazooie, which would be fine if they didn't have these, again, as Abo puts it, Xbox huge worlds. And this is a problem because you lose track of where you're going unless you go in first, you explore the world, you get absolutely everything. You leave, you expand it. This doubles the size of the world or quadruples it in some cases. And the first world was already pretty dang big. And you're like, okay, I guess I'll go do all that now. And the problem is to complete every world, you got to find all music notes, which are quills in this game. Hidden in random places. They're in places that would be in your way and you can see them for the most part. But some of them are a little obnoxious. And they're intentionally put in places, I think, are there just to troll you. Like there's one behind a temple that you spend your time climbing up and have no idea how to get behind unless you jump off from the top or from another level up. And there's just a music note down there. That's it. That's by far the most annoying one. It took me well over an hour to find.
Aren't collectible games supposed to be annoying like that? Isn't that the whole point?
Well, not always. There's plenty of collectible games. Banjo-Kazooie is a good example, where you can logically go through a level, even if you don't know it, and everything will be in your way. You can see it. The level's small enough and compact. All the collectibles are, you know kind of where they're going to be. You explore each area one at a time, and by the time you've checked everything, you've probably gotten everything. And Yooka-Laylee's kind of like that in some levels. When Avo played it as well, and we played it kind of together. I played it a little bit after him, and we were talking about it a lot. Both me and him agree the swamp level, the third level, is actually a really good level. We both enjoyed that one. There was nothing wrong with that level for once. So that's the only level where there are absolutely no problems. The 5th level was okay too. Unfortunately, there are recurring characters in every single level. There are 25 pages and kgs to get. Maybe I do want to say it after all.
Ugh,
so you gotta go get pages. And about 4 of them are from recurring characters that show up in every single world. But the big 2 to talk about are Kartos, the God of War, and Rextros 64. These 2 guys can go die. They need to be patched out of the game. They're so bad. So Rextros 64 gives you his shtick is he makes you play mobile game style mini games or like NES style mini games on his arcade machine. And the first time you just have to beat it, which is not hard, and it gives you a pagey. And then you have to beat his high score a second time to get his second pagey, and then you're done with it. And that's all you have to do. But a couple of these games are really jank and don't control well at all. Let me emphasize. The second one is not very hard. It's one of the easier ones in the second level. But after the time runs out, and you've well beat his high score by collecting feathers on a spinning platform and dodging enemies, about 2 seconds after the timer runs out, those enemies can still hit you. And you got no control of your character.
I see.
And they take a quarter of your collected stuff if they do. I was a little mad. And it's like a timer of 5 minutes, so you have to go back and do 5 minutes again. The other one is, remember those lane hurdles like Rattata racing in the N64 game, Pokemon Stadium,
yes,
where you ran the Rattatas and had jump hurdles? They have that, except it's a little more in-depth than that. There's more types of stuff to jump. But it's absolutely just as obnoxious. You don't have to tap A, but the style of obstacles they give you are very obnoxious. So you have to do that, and this is easily one of the worst ones in the game. The 4th world in general is terrible. Everybody hates it. Everybody. Because you don't get pages the normal way. Rextros and Kartos are the only ones that give you pages the normal way by doing a quest or finding it in the world. These, you have to go around and look all over the level for something that can be broken or some game to play that you haven't played yet to get little tokens that you trade in 10 at a time for pages.
Oh, every time you say that word, it's just grotesque. Pages.
But also the reason people hate World 4, aside from Rextros being terrible, there's only so much I can say about them. They're just bad. Just go watch a YouTube video of it. It took me 4 hours to beat both of these 2, by the way, together. Is Kartos. Kartos in World 4 is easily the hardest part of the game for me. And Kartos is, remember those segments on Minecart in Donkey Kong Country?
I didn't play Donkey Kong Country.
Okay, so it's an auto scroller where you're inside of a minecart and you have to jump from track to track, but the physics of the game mostly stay intact.
Right.
So that's what it's like. So it's 2D as well. So you're going from left to right. So doing this, you go around the track in Kartos the God of War, and you have to collect a certain number of gems on the track. Sounds like a fairly average challenge until the fourth world, where there is no margin for error at all, and it goes on for 4 minutes. And can in fact loop if you take the wrong path, because if there'll be like 4 paths in front of you at slightly different elevations. If you accidentally land on the wrong one, and the only way you can control this is you can use a speed boost or a break, and it's got a 2-second cooldown every time you use one before you can use it again. So you can speed boost, and then you got a 2-second cooldown before you can break or speed boost again. So and to get to the correct path, you have to hold the break, and if you don't remember where stuff is, you're gonna miss it. So it can actually loop around the whole level again, most of it anyway. So it make you do it all over again. And you're eventually going to run into something and lose some gems and have to just restart the dumb thing. And there's no way to quickly restart these dumb things. The quickest way is to die, but that can take a while. So that it doesn't sound hard until you look up a YouTube video of it and know just how little room for error you have. You can get hit twice in 4 minutes on that thing, and there's literally an obstacle every half second. It takes a lot of patience to learn the layout of the whole map. That was easily the worst pagey. The second worst one was another Rextros one. We actually get out of the 4th level in the 5th level. Hope you like Flappy Bird. A lot.
No, nobody likes Flappy Bird.
You are playing Flappy Bird for 3 minutes at a time where you cannot hit the ground, or you will not beat his high score. You might be able to fall once. There'll be feathers along. Instead of just making it through pipes, there's a bunch of obstacles around, but some of them are even harder than a pipe in Flappy Bird. And you have to collect these feathers all over the map as you're Flappy Birding. So you'll be radically out of place if you go for the wrong ones, and you're sure to get hit. Now, you can adjust it a little bit by holding back or forward on the control stick to make yourself slow down or speed up a little bit to, like, right before a pipe, you speed up when you're about to hit it, so you go through it faster, so you're less likely to tap your head into it. So you can use that, and it's the only reason you can get through this thing. But learning to control it, if you haven't played Flappy Bird, I played it once, just because somebody asked me to. But if you don't know how to play Flappy Bird, you're going to be there a while. And I was there for, no joke, 2 hours, trying to beat that high score. I had a very nice commentary from, I think it was CGP Grey I had on in the background. I was rewatching some of his videos. They're the only thing that kept me sane.
Flappy Bird. I don't really understand your deep and heartfelt criticisms of my WoW playing habits when you're willing to put yourself through this sort of thing in a game that
because I take breaks from the crazy. I am constantly crazy personally, and I take breaks from the crazy. I don't constantly do this. I have breaks where I do stuff that's actually fun. But I wanted this game to be good, and it has the workings of a good game. It has Banjo-Kazooie's shell on there. It's just a couple things were not done right. If they'd have cut these levels in half and just killed Rextros, I'd have been happy.
You really don't like this Rextros guy.
I don't. If it had been one hard one that took a while to get, I'd have been okay with that. But the fact that 2 Rextros challenges are nearly impossible until you practice them for 2 hours. The fact that the 4th world and 3rd world cards are really hard. The 3rd one's at least fair, though. The 4th one's not. You have no margin for error. You know, if it was just one that was stupid hard, that would be okay. But at least 7 or 8 of these are 2-hour investment for one pagey. And you need 125, I think? More than that. You need like 145, I think, to finish the game. And relative to go fly up there and touch it, you know, 2 hours is a pretty big investment. So it has the shell of a good game. I wanted to see if there was anything redeeming in it, but it's really not. The mini games that are functional are not really functional well. The game just doesn't feel polished. Like, even the stuff that's good is not very good. So you're working towards mediocre challenges, and it's more just to finish the checklist. So you finish the checklist, and then you go fight the boss. You only need 100 pages to go fight him if you just want to play the game and go through the worlds. So you can miss 45 of them. That's your margin for error. So that's about 2 worlds full of pages to be relevant. Because each world has 25, and the hub world has 10. So there's, yeah. So you go fight the final boss. And he is actually really good. So there is one redeeming part of the game. As a final boss for a Banjo-Kazooie type game, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was good. And then the game decided to slap me in the face at the very last second. This was wonderful. As the last cutscene was playing, the game crashed before the credits could roll.
Marvelous.
On PS4 with disc. Yeah, that was wonderful. I got the plat, though. It popped up at the start of the cutscene. I'm like, I'm not even going to bother to look it up. I didn't even go bother to YouTube it. So, yeah, I don't know what to say. I was willing to give the game a pass and judge it fairly, even though it's had a lot of political nonsense going on. But it's just not good. It's just not worth your time. I think Banjo-Tooie is an objectively better game. The only thing Yooka-Laylee does is have better graphics. That's it. And that's up to opinion. If you want a good collectathon, go play Banjo-Tooie.
I suppose the thing is that you can't exactly play Banjo-Tooie on PC without engaging in technically illegal shenanigans.
If you bought it before, I mean, it's not technically illegal in some states.
The fact is that buying it is not exactly easy either anymore.
I suppose that's true.
But yeah, I guess that they are trying to fill that niche. They're trying to be that game for the current generation of players and for PC players as well. But yeah, I think that people have the wrong idea about these nostalgia exercises. I think that people want to feel the way they felt back then. They don't want to play the game they played back then. And they certainly don't want an inferior copy of the one they played back then.
I thought that too. I actually booted up a thing of Banjo-Tooie, and I did the first world to compare it. I put a lot of effort into this just to be sure I was right. Because I thought the same thing. I'm like, maybe it just wasn't as good. No, the first world of Banjo-Tooie is amazing. It's really fun. Everything's awesome. Yeah, there's a lot of waiting in cutscenes, but, you know, you can stomach that. The puzzles are fun. I mean, yeah, the shooty segments in Banjo-Tooie are not good, but that's one segment of the game that's in 2 out of, like, 9 or 10 worlds. So, and even then, it's not that bad. Nothing like Kartos. You might fail once because it's a little janky. You're not going to be stuck for 2 hours on the World 4 Kartos thing trying to learn the whole track.
Yeah, it's certainly true that a lot of those old Rare games do age quite well because so much love has been put into their construction. Like, I've got a friend who just constantly goes back to and replays Conker's Bad Fur Day. Like, he thinks it's really, really fun. Plus, that game is kind of weird, but...
Oh, Great Mighty Pooh. Where's Fern? He likes that guy.
Fern's probably still loving.
Oh dear. So yeah, that we've gone on for a while. My week. That was all I really wanted to talk about. I don't have anything significant in anything else to talk about. I think I do, but I forgot it. Oh, that's right. You wanted me to talk about Umineko because I've been going through that again a little bit.
Yep.
Okay. So at the behest of all, I didn't think there was enough here, but I'll talk about it a little bit. I keep trying to go through Umineko. I liked it when I read it, but I read it a long time ago back in college when I had more free time. I'm not in college
because
anymore.
It's like the longest VN ever written.
It's like 80 hours for the first half, if you're lucky. I'm at chapter 4 out of 8, which is a lot of progress that I've made slowly over the course of time, in various points of picking up and starting over. And this is where the VN ends anyway for the Steam releases. We don't have part 2 yet. So what I didn't know in part 4 though was this is actually something I'm really happy about because it gives me hope for developers. And I checked to see if it was in the original, and it was as well. Chapter 4 doesn't start. It starts with a flash forward and then goes back to the island where the events are happening. But you start about the first 10% of it is set in modern day with the protagonist's character's little sister at the time and would now be his age. And in the city, there are characters that are the people that did the fan translation. So I forget their name now off the top of my head, but what's his name? I can't pronounce it. 07. Just
I can't remember.
Sent them
it's like Ryuki or something. I can't remember.
It's a weird one.
It's not something that I've taken special notice of. I'm not an ardent follower of his material because Higurashi struck me initially as a rather unpleasant horror story,
and the art
rather than being a mystery when I first saw it. Reports about it, so I just never really looked into it, and it was a lot later that I picked up the manga, which I reasonably enjoyed.
Yeah, it's So yeah, I like him a lot, but the 07 his name stands out so much I keep forgetting his actual name he puts before it, his handle. So yeah, he's just the 07 guy. So seventh expansion is his company. We'll do that instead. That's easier to understand. So him personally from seventh expansion sent the fan translators a letter and said, "Yeah, great job, guys. I love it." Instead of sending them to C and D like they do nowadays, and actually put them in the game as insignificant characters.
Well, I mean, there are a lot. He's basically an indie developer, so because I mean, he's a writer first and a developer second, because
An artist negative last.
Let's not talk about his art. Let's just pretend that the new sprites are the only sprites that ever existed. How about we do that? But it's a lot of those smaller, particularly the Japanese developers, don't have that sort of anal retentive attitude towards their IP. I mean, like, maybe it's because he's never sober, but Zun has never had any problems with people ripping off his stuff. Like, he's always keen for it. He also can't draw to save himself, so maybe that's the common link there.
Yeah, the only ones I can really think that are really anal about it is 5PB. They're really the only ones that are super buddy about it.
Well,
even Spike Chunsoft isn't that bad about it.
Even if you say that, it's very hard to get, and it's only loosened up very recently, but Nasu used to be a little bit tyrannical with his distribution of his IP. Like, he was very, very reluctant to farm it out to people, which has clearly been loosened lately. But I mean, back when in the era, say, when the first Fate Stay Night anime was made, like, Type Moon stuff didn't get made, more or less. Yeah. Nowadays, everything is Type Moon. there's a Type Moon everything.
UFO Table is considered married to Type Moon and was cheating on them when they did the Zestiria anime. There's a long joke about that in a funny YouTube video, by the way.
It's not cool. It's not cool. Why would you do this?
Don't cheat on
Especially
Type Moon.
For Zestiria.
Don't do that. You can make the hour-long commercial again. That was fine. Just don't do Zestiria. We'll finish the Heaven Feel movies, dang it, and do them right. So, I hope they do them right. I really do. I want to see that climax. Okay. Not the ones all the way leading up to the climax.
I was like, I hope that plan wasn't intended.
I thought about it after I said it.
Yeah, you need to work on that one, considering that I think arguably that has the cringiest sex scenes.
And the most
in
frequent as well.
Franchise.
And by far the most. It's not funny when it happens every 10 minutes.
It wasn't even funny the first time. Like, everything about it is it just strikes me as deeply unpleasant. Like, they're some of the least erotic sorts of adult scenes ever written, I think. Not just because he doesn't know how to write them, but because everything about the situation is just deeply cringy and abnormal. And that's why the people refer to the Heaven's Feel route as the route where Shiro romances Ilya and sleeps with Sakura.
Yeah. There's a lot of special names for a certain black thing that appears in that route, and how's it avoided a certain kind. But yeah, there is a lot, and the Bleached Underpants version is much better for it, I think. But yeah, if you want to see it because it is funny, go watch the one in the Fate route where Ilya has to explain to Shiro how to have sex.
Wait, you lost me.
Or not Ilya, Rin. Where Rin has to explain to Shiro how to have sex with Saber.
There's an entire meme around the "you lost me" thing.
Oh, yes. So go watch that one. It is easily the most funny, and they are not very good after that. You can easily skip them. They're not funny anymore.
They could have been so much more funny if they'd been intended to be funny rather than accidentally funny, because he can't write those scenes at all.
It's the only reason that there's any evidence that it wasn't intentional, because it didn't stay like that one. Oh, I'm still going to tell myself he just didn't want to write it and he did it intentionally. So it makes me feel better.
As opposed to, waiting for what's it called to be finished. Mahou Tsukai.
I checked it today, actually. I wrote something in the Discord about it. I think it'll be out in 2022. If the translation, that's faster than we were at, because apparently, okay, so here's the story with this. We're going to go on a tangent town. We're already on one. We're going to go into sub-tangent town. This thing was being translated by Kami-Subs, and this is the Type Moon work I've been really looking forward to. It has my favorite character in it. I want to see it, and I've heard by all accounts it's one of his best works. I really want this thing to get translated. So Kami-Subs for 2.5 years was working on this thing, and then they stopped updating their progress and left it like 3/4 of the way done, 66% of the way done, something like that. Apparently they finished it 4 years ago and just never bothered to update it. But that's not the problem. It's gone into what they after 4 years ago, they said it needs editing. They didn't update their page. They haven't updated it at all, but they still respond to the comments. And it's been stuck in editing hell for 4 years. Just the thing's been edited for 4 years after supposedly the entire thing's been translated. So everybody assumes it's a dead project.
It's Kami in a nutshell, really.
Yeah. So what's his name? MC John or whatever on the Nebraska forums.
Beastslayer.
Beastslayer. I don't go to them very much. I used to poke at them, but ever since not. He got tired of it, and he translates for fun. He is releasing the game, and he has a released up to Chapter 7 version now with the interface all done. So he's our new hope, and our last one really, because everyone else has given up.
Well, I mean, Beastly have managed to get these things done when everybody thought they wouldn't get done in the past. Like that's what happened with Hollow Ataraxia. Like it was never going to finish. It was going to be a project stuck in translation hell for eternity, and they pulled together and it got done in the end. And it was very sudden as well, and there was almost no chatter about it until it was done. So it could happen. You may see it before you die.
Yeah, but yeah, John was like, okay, you know what, I'm tired of this, and just dropped the first 5 chapters on us out of the blue. Just said, yep, none of that. Here, can somebody read through this and edit it for me? Y'all can read it if you want. And we're like, wait, what? He's like, I'm going to do the rest. Hang on. He comes back 4 months later. Here's chapter 6. He's come back 8 months later. Here's chapter 7. So it may actually get done. But it's not going very fast. But at least it's better than not getting it at all. So I'll take it. I'll take it in 2020. It'll be my most hype game for 2020. 2022, sorry. In my calculation, the speed he's going. Because there's 14 chapters in the game in a bonus chapter, or 13 in a bonus chapter. So he's exactly halfway through, if he's got the interface done. By all accounts he has, so yeah. So there's hope. Okay, out of the sub-tangent. Fate. Where were we with Fate?
We weren't supposed to be talking about Fate. You were finishing off talking about Umineko.
All right, so out of the tangent, back on the real topic. Umineko. The thing's really big, is what this is going to boil down to every single time. It's really good, though. I'm noticing a lot more stuff as I'm going through it. I'm not going to spoil it because you want to read it, and I'm sure there are people that should really read this. It's just really long.
I just don't know if there is enough time in the world to read that story.
If you have a job, it's really hard. If you have a job where you do nothing, as long as you have to get up for 5 minutes at a time, it's really long. But
you could take really long toilet breaks with a smartphone.
Could. It's on Steam though. I can't play Steam games though. That's where I bought it, and it has the new art on Steam. But yeah, it is a really good story. I think it is a very polarizing story. I will say this. The first half, up to the point I'm at, this is about where the people drop it because they don't understand what's going on and they don't want to wait for the end. It is a story that builds and builds and builds and finally pays off at the end, and that ending is still open to interpretation. And I think it's amazing. A lot of other people do too. Some people absolutely hate it for that reason. So you're working towards a goal here, and you're not going to get many bones thrown along the way. When you do get them thrown at you at the climax of each chapter, at the midpoint, they're really big bones, but there's not very many of them. But it is a slog. This guy seriously needs to learn how to get out of purple prose land, or just put stuff on the cutting room floor. English, it's easy. Oh.
Do they properly tie it into Higurashi at any point?
It didn't originally, but we did get confirmation by 7th expansion and the dude himself. He did say that a certain character is the incarnation of every single failed attempt in Higurashi of Rika.
Because I'm pretty sure that the manga I think does have commentary at various points from Burn Castle and Lambda Delta.
Yeah.
Not very. Not none of it makes any sense, but they do have commentary on it.
It will not make sense until the end. Birkenstill is a major player in the 6th through 8th chapters. Lambda Delta doesn't really show up until the last two, but when they show up is when the story really starts getting moving, and you start getting more and more bones thrown at you and figuring stuff out. But for the longest time, it had basically been all but confirmed, because it's implied that Rika was stuck in a similar time loop playing games with a supernatural force as a piece instead of the player, because of the system this game works. And by some miracle, she managed to get out. And so every failed attempt of her in that game, where she lost and died horribly, manifested itself as the Witch of Miracles, because it was complete luck that she got out. It was supposed to be impossible. It was a trapped loop that had broken logic in it. It was not supposed to be solvable, and she somehow pulled it off. It just happened to fix itself. So that's why she's the super powerful Witch of Miracles. And she looks exactly like Rika, so everybody said it's Rika. And so yes, we have evil Rika. Spoilers, she's evil. If that's what happens to you, that's kind of what happens. But you figure that out pretty quick as soon as she steps into the story for realsies. She's not a nice person. She's called Trollkenstill for a reason. But she is one of the best characters, so yes, it is tied into Higurashi that way, as in it's set in the same universe. But other than that, no other elements from Higurashi really cross over. I can't think of any. There might be one buried in that monolith, but I'll let you know when I get to it. It's quite the dig to go through. I'll have to spot it on the way. I'll be quite tired going through it.
Right, anyway, we've got some news to cover first before we close off, because we've gone on some of the lengthiest tangents in history because Fern isn't here to save us.
This is why the Marshmallow Library show is not good. This is why we need Fern. Okay. This is going to be a 4-hour show. Let's see. Let's chew through these as quick as we can. We talked about stuff relevant. So I actually had a segue topic. What do I do with it? Okay, here it is. So I left out a couple things in my Yooka-Laylee talk because there's actually news about it. It's small news. So we'll start off with this for segue's sake. So Yooka-Laylee had, like I mentioned last week, that you don't know yet, it has a few problems. These include the camera and the cutscenes in particular. The camera's not getting fixed, but the cutscenes are. And these are things that should have been fixed already. So what is it, 2 weeks after launch? 3 weeks? 2 weeks. And they're now addressing some basic stuff that should have been fixed before this game was launched. It can take up to, I timed it at 15 seconds for a dialogue window that's 2 lines long to fill up, with huge font at that. Because the characters will talk at this speed in their voice, and it goes at the speed of talk.
But they aren't saying words. How can they do that?
But they're not saying words. So everybody just wants to mash X to get the whole text box to fill up, but you can't do that. There's no button that lets you do that.
How could they possibly have released a game with text boxes in it that you can't skip text?
Yeah, it's basically a 15-second hurry up and wait. So you have to read it if you want to know what's going on. I'm kind of glad the ending crashed on me now that I think about it, because it was all that until that point.
You're just like half an hour of you sitting there listening to wah, 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 wah.
Yes, that was exactly what it was until that point. There'll be ellipses where they actually pause. Oh, it's a nightmare. So yes, you can now press the X button to make the dialogue just appear and read it. You can also skip cutscenes. Glory, hallelujah. If anybody, for some dumb reason, wanted to replay this game, you'd shoot yourself in the face every time you had to wait 20 minutes to go through. It's not really 20 minutes. It's more like 5 at most, but still, it's extremely annoying. So, yeah. So, they reduced the audio of the gibberish voices, too, apparently. I don't know what that means. I think that means the sound has been adjusted because it is horribly balanced on some characters. Some you can't hear, some you can. Let's see. And the last thing they did was the camera, which has been the biggest enemy of this game. It's a functional camera. It's not functioning very well. And that is because it gets caught on terrain. So they're addressing this. And this will help the game tremendously for general gameplay. It won't help you with Kartos and Rexteros because you don't control it normally and the camera's fixed. But the rest of the game will be much more enjoyable simply because the camera won't get hung up on objects. The camera, I think, is a physical object behind Yooka. And if it hits something, it gets stuck.
So
That's
wasn't the camera literally a physical object in like Mario or something?
yeah,
Like
it was. It's like the Lakitu.
yeah, sitting on the cloud with a
Yeah,
fishing rod with a camera on it.
yeah, that's how it was in Mario 64. It's like they took that concept, but instead of turning the camera off when you can't spin it, they'll force the camera into weird positions randomly while you're playing the game already, which is obnoxious enough. But it just gets caught on everything. This is a huge issue because you're like, I need to look around this area camera, get off of the vent. I need to see if I got everything, which is part of what contributes to running around the levels for 2 hours every time you're done to go get all the quills. It's a 20-hour completion game. Most of it is playing Rextros Kartos and finding the last quill that you can't find because the camera didn't cooperate. So, they're finally addressing some of that. Fixing the camera will help a ton. If you could cut every single quill hunt out of that game, I would bump it up like a whole letter grade in my book. It's currently sitting at D+. It would move up to C+. So, yeah. Fixing that'll be good. Skipping dialogue will get you not a full quarter grade bump, but, it's something you needed to do before the game came out. All of this was stuff that should have been found in testing. They had enough money to do it.
Well, I mean, essentially it was, right? It was just found late, which makes me wonder if this is about Kickstarter delivery dates.
Probably. They probably didn't want to push it back again because they pushed it back twice already, but them's the breaks. Persona 5 got pushed back 4 times by 3 years, and we got a great game.
Well,
Yooka-Laylee came out, and it wasn't finished.
People actually care about Persona, though. Like, in the case of Yooka-Laylee, they've got the sort of the fundamental cancer that is Kickstarter all over it to begin with. Like, people are never really sure if they should trust those things.
I wasn't labeling the degree of fault on them for releasing it then. I'm just saying leaving a game in development when it's not done is a good idea.
No, what I'm saying is here it wouldn't be. Because Kickstarter. Like, you don't want to be another Kickstarter that has delay after delay after delay after delay. And when you hit about 3 delays, then people start to get suspicious.
I suppose it makes sense simply because they aren't beholden to a publisher that's going to come in there and kick their butts. This is a big problem with Kickstarter, I think. I think what they did with Yooka-Laylee could have been finished in a year. Easily. A lot of the worlds, at least the ground-looking terrain and detail, they're not very polished, like I said. They're full of stuff to do, but they're not very polished. So they don't look the greatest. They look passable. But what they did could have been done in a year. If they'd have had a producer from a publisher come in and kick them in the butt every few months, the whole product would be as it is now a year ago, and we'd got a full game that was fun 2 years later. Or a year later.
So a year from now, they would have patched it up to be functional.
Yeah. So it just goes to show the importance of people that come in and kick you in the butt. Like, it could have been done. It could have been done by this point in the 2 years they took from the start of their Kickstarter. If they'd had a producer there, they could have given us a pretty dang good game. If it just came in there and kicked them in the butt and said, you need to fix this, you need to fix this, you need to fix this, what are your testers saying to you? Come on, tell me. Like, is the camera a problem? What are they getting mad at? Do you have statistics? Okay, you need to fix that. That's what a publisher's there for. They're not always evil. They're there to kick the devs in the butt, to make sure that Yooka-Laylee doesn't happen, or Broken Age doesn't happen. That's what producers are for. And publishers, sorry. Did I say producers? I meant publishers. But yeah, that's what they're for. So, I'm disappointed in you, Yooka-Laylee. I'm going to leave Yooka-Laylee at that, though. I think I'm done with that chapter forever now, unless some more drama happens, since they'd love to be in the highlight of the political sphere right now. Although I hope that fades away. I don't think anything else dumb can happen.
I think that was... I think that they did that. They know it was dumb. They did it because they figured it was the best play at the time, and they're not going to do anything more about it.
Seemed like a PR move to me that they're like, this might get us more sales. That was strictly aimed around that.
I don't think it was
internet culture, and it blew up in their face.
I don't think it was that they thought it would get them more sales. I think it's because they were afraid that they would get sabotaged by somebody if they didn't do it. Like the whole social justice thing is fundamentally a blackmail exercise. They do not and have never had any kind of moral high ground. They just blackmail people. That's how they operate.
Yeah. Remember, you're a terrible person. Feel bad for it and give me stuff. That's social justice in a nutshell. Or let me have sex with whoever I want, however I want, whenever I want, and not have any consequences for it. Even though you can do the entire first half by yourself legally already, you just got to pay for it if it happens. Anyway, it's not going to be a political show. We're going to keep this at least a normal show. even though we're almost at 3 hours. Okay, I got all the stuff this week. Do you have anything out of it that jumped out to you?
I
I think you
can't
got
look
one.
at it right now. I'm being mauled by
Oh,
dudes. Just
okay, I'll grab
pick a
one.
topic. Pick a topic. I can't talk
Okay,
about Yooka-Laylee, so
okay, so we'll do the ones that I can talk about, and it's going to be heavily on me, and you can have a time to shine the one thing you picked out. Okay, Overwatch had a thing that happened, so more Blizzard hate to continue the segue. We're going to continue the segue next topic too. So I'm going to do these together actually and call them one thing. So Blizzard has been very happy about announcing that Hearthstone hit 70 million players. That's and they're very proud of this. This is 70 million downloads in reality, of course, and the active player base is dropping faster than a rock.
yeah, I don't think downloads mean anything especially on a game that you can play on a PC platform as well as a mobile platform.
Yeah, and it's per account at least, so it's not individual downloads.
Like,
Although I raised an eyebrow at it at first.
Can you play it on a phone?
Yeah, you can play it on phone, on tablet,
So
Android, or
basically,
iOS.
that means that anybody who owns a tablet probably has it on 3 devices. They are one person. Like an active player who plays on a tablet probably plays on a phone
Yeah.
and on a PC as well. So that one person actually accounts for 3 downloads.
No, that's what I meant. That's what I meant by per account, because your battle tag, you'll still log into it on your phone and your tablets. So it only counting per battle tag. So that's why I said, oh, okay, it's not.
Are they only counting per battle tag? Did they say that?
It's not in the article I have linked, but I saw it somewhere. I got water on my heaty thing, and it made
Not that there
directly
aren't
noise.
people with multiple of those as well.
That is true, but and there are people that have multiple accounts, although they're generally only a small, very minuscule, you need a microscope to see it, proportion of the super hardcore, where they will make alt accounts. Some people do have accounts in other regions because until recently there was not any form of cross-region play between the West, effectively, and EU and Asia. There was no crossover, but so there have been people that play on other regions to play with their friends or to see the meta going on there, because it's different in every region. When the meta's healthy, it hasn't been recently.
I don't see how the meta could be that different in different regions, because everything seems to converge on one solution within like a day.
Well, until we had staple cards that showed up in every deck until when did it come out? Until Secret Paladin became big, and the expansion, whatever mini expansion
But
came out after
that has to
Grand
be
Tournament.
months and months ago now.
Yeah, it's over a year ago.
I remember you talking about Secret Paladin taking over the meta, but that was a long time ago, and you haven't had anything positive to say since.
Yeah, that's where the drop-off point hit. That's where people don't go over to learn the meta anymore. They just go over to start on a fresh account and do a free-to-play account for some reason. I don't know why people do that. Or they want to stream on another thing or another region, or they want to. There's a bunch of reasons too, but not many people do it is the point. But they do it. So I figured I'd throw that out there. It is, I would say, less than 0.5% of the population that has an alternate account in another region.
Yeah, no matter which way you slice it, battle tags which have at some point downloaded a free game is not really a good way of measuring participation.
Yeah. I'm not sure if you had to launch the game. I don't think you did, though, from these numbers. That number's just too big for people to have had to launch the game as well, I think.
I don't know, like it seems to me like you could quite practically count every single battle tag in existence under that, because they all technically own Hearthstone.
You could.
And I expect that lots of people just downloaded it because it was a free game and then never touched it.
Yeah, it is a Blizzard product, and it is always the top-rated game on the iOS store. I don't know about the Android store. I have it on both iOS devices now. But it's always going to be there, flashing at you, play this game. And it's a Blizzard product, so you're going to download it, and you might see it and go, oh, I might play this later. I know plenty of people that did that. That number is actually probably more significant than the entire player base of the game right now. I don't know whether they booted it up or not, but...
Yeah, I think that it probably doesn't take very many goes at getting completely shreked by a cookie cutter deck 5 times in a row before a person never plays that game again.
They're doing better about locking the higher tiers out of the lower tiers, thankfully.
But everybody's using the same deck, so why do you even need to count that? Because it's not going to help. If
Because
everybody is playing the same deck to a set of instructions that they read on the internet, then you're still going to see the same sort of play at low skill levels.
it doesn't anymore. It used to. There used to be creative ways you could get around it. That was my whole shtick when I ground up to the top 2%. It's just that one season, there was something I found that worked against the current meta with new cards that people didn't know how to counter and just ran them over. But the rest of the season, I just played weird anti-meta decks trying to build around that stupid deck and playtesting it with people. It could be done. And then Secret Paladin happened, and we only saw one deck, or 3 decks at most. And 1 to 3 is not a healthy deck slot thing. Even Yu-Gi-Oh! In its super archetype-based tier dominance, you still have, 7 decks at the minimum that are running a meta right now. And rarely are they all using the same type of mechanic. So you can, you can't just play a single type of anti-meta deck and just win against everything. But, Hearthstone doesn't have the tools to develop an anti-meta deck to stop this thing in the first place, so it doesn't matter. And they've introduced rotation instead of banning it with the style of release that they have, which was a terrible idea. Both work depending on how your game's set up. Just because Magic doesn't make it the best for what you've got. I'm a little mad, can you tell?
Yeah, well, I mean, this just plays into what we always thought was the case, though, right? Like, they aren't people who actually know how to design a CCG. So they basically did whatever they felt like, and every time they felt they needed to change something, they looked at a successful CCG and just copied that and assumed that it would work, despite the fact that their context is different.
And ban lists are important. Rotations are important. This is a big decision for every TCG out there. And some use ban lists, and some use rotations, and some use a combination of them. And you need to do this. If you need to understand what type of game you have, what your release schedule is like, and what your players are doing, and know what to do with it. They picked the absolute worst combination of them both. Introducing the Hall of Fame was the dumbest idea ever because it assumes that these cards will never, ever leave and come back into playability. And they do not use it to ban problem cards.
Yeah, that's one of those things that highlights the idea that this is a lack of experience thing, because you actually have to think that no card that ceases to be safe in an environment will ever be playable again. Like, that's just not true.
Yeah, and the type of cards they're putting in there, like Azure Drake is a really good 4-drop that's been out since the vanilla set. So they threw it in there and said, okay, you can't use this guy anymore. He's just been a solid 4-drop if you needed to fill the floor slot. And he got thrown in there just because he was in a lot of decks. That was the only justification for it.
Well, I mean, this is just Blizzard metrics in a nutshell as well, then. Like, the way they judge whether a modification they have made to a system in World of Warcraft is good is participation. If people are participating in it, it doesn't mean that they were doing it because they had to or because it was optimal or anything like that. It means they must like it. So we're going to do more of that. So if people are using a card in all their decks, it's because it must be ridiculously powerful.
It's not as dumb as their WoW logic, at least. I can understand wanting to free up 2 deck slots so people actually, try out new cards in the 4-slot drop that are better than Azure Drake, or could be tried out at least. But it's not a card that's an emergency problem. It's not breaking the game. You don't need to stick it on a ban list. It's not Stratos here.
Why not rotate it out? There's no reason you can't rotate that out.
Well, it's in the base set. The base set's always available.
Oh,
that's the other problem they made with it. They made the base set always available.
There is a very good reason.
Well, actually, that's not true.
Magic the Gathering, while Magic the Gathering had core sets, which it's a model they've moved away from now, they refreshed them. They did not stick to one core set. Like, the rules don't really change between core sets, but they still release one. It's not just a money spinner. It's to make sure that that you don't end up with cards getting permanently lodged in the meta from the base set. Not that the base set usually has very powerful ones, but it can do.
Yeah, I was thinking about it from 2 angles at once before I got to explaining why it was bad. That was not specifically why it's bad. It's because of something else, but I'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, the base set's always available. That itself is fine. The problem is with their... What's a good way to put this? The style of cards coming out is not synergistic with any past cards. None of the cards in the base set are stronger than anything that came out in the second expansion, except for maybe Azure Knight winning or Azure Drake winning in some decks. Now keep in mind this card was good, and maybe I'd say in competitive play, 30% of players throw it in their deck as a good 4-drop, just to fill space. It was a good staple. But, they're putting cards that people use a lot on that ban list from the base set, which should still stay in the game, is what I mean. I was thinking about too many things at once. But yeah, the thing staying there is actually good. But they put the most interactive card in the game that everybody loved and played because it was fun, even the pros in their hardcore decks, because it was good and it was fun, and that was Sylvanas. And they just took her out. Said you can't play that anymore because everybody's playing with it. I think everybody wanted to kill Blizzard.
Well, I mean, this, as I said, it sounds like inexperience. It sounds like they don't know how to interpret the data that they've got. Everybody using something doesn't mean that it's overpowered. It simply just means it's the right card for a strategy. Like in Magic the Gathering, they never banned Terror because it's a staple card that every black control deck will have, if it's in rotation. But that doesn't make it overpowered. It's just the right card for that job.
It's a staple. It's good. It can be used. You can replace it with more specialized stuff if you want. Everybody that does deck construction regularly knows this. It's just a lot of decks. Somewhere in your deck, you're going to have a staple fill a slot. This is always going to happen. It doesn't matter what card game you play. In Magic, if you need what's Terror, like 1 or 2 mana, if you need a slot for that, and you don't have something better for your archetype or whatever you're building, you put Terror in because it's one of the better staples. In Yu-Gi-Oh, you run Torrential Tribute as a trap if you don't have a more specialized trap you need because it's a good staple. In Hearthstone, you put Azure Drake in your deck if you need a 4-drop because it's a good staple. It's just the way the game works. That's how TCGs work. There will always be a good staple card in the rotation.
Blizzard would look, if Blizzard was running Magic the Gathering, they would look at all of the burn decks and see that Shock was in all of them and then ban Shock. Like, what would Red do if Shock was gone?
I don't know. I don't play much Magic.
You surely are familiar with Shock. It's like one of the oldest cards in the game.
Oh, is that the 1 mana deal 2 damage or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It's like, I think it's one of the top 10 most reprinted cards, I think.
I don't know if it's like super class by anything specifically ever, so I don't know. It's hard with Magic because the way their rotations work to keep up with what things are, and because I played it recently.
It's outclassed by Lightning Bolt.
Okay.
Which is 3 damage for the same cost. But the thing is that over the course of years, the Magic the Gathering development team concluded that the value to red of 1 red mana was 2.5 damage, but you can't have fractional damage outside of the gimmick sets. So
like a Goblin Grenade.
So they just periodically print one or the other. I don't think that they bring Lightning Bolt back very often because it's so powerful. I don't know if they've done it recently or not. I can't remember. But they...
Oh, yeah. I think I remember all this with Red now. Back when I was doing my Magic the Gathering lore read-through that I actually did. It was very painful. Did I talk about that on the show? Anyway, don't remember enough of it to talk about now. But I think I'm caught up with you now.
But yeah, that's sort of something that they discovered through experience. That this was the value of that function. And so they established basically that Shock is an underpowered card, but it's a staple, so people put it in their deck. But if Lightning Bolt is there, everybody will use Lightning Bolt instead. And Lightning Bolt's a bit too powerful because of some of the things you can get away with it. But it's not so powerful that it needs to be banned either. Like a card can be not just a staple, but a powerful staple that's ahead of another card that's also a staple from a previous rotation, and yet still not be ban material. But these are things that you learn through being experienced. They're not really things that you can just guess at because you're Blizzard and you're rich. Therefore, since you have money, you make the rules.
Assuming they aren't, well, they're just going on Blizzard philosophy now because it's what they do. If it's popular, you fix it or ban it. But if they were Yu-Gi-Oh players, for instance, it's the only game I regularly play that has a ban list. The only card game I super regularly play. So it has a ban list done right. It took them experimentation too, but if they were players of that instead of Magic, they'd done the ban list right. What they do, they ban and unban cards regularly. They don't ever keep anything in permanent ban, and they do it to break metas. That's the whole point of it. They want to keep the game shaken up, and they don't want people stagnating with one deck type. The ban list is the sole reason the entire collection of Yu-Gi-Oh! Can still exist because it's so well maintained. People will whine and complain about the ban list all the time, and yes, I'm sad Stratos is still banned too, and I want to play an Elemental Hero deck just as much as anybody else, but he really needs to be on there because otherwise everybody would play in Dark Law. There's a good reason he's on there. It makes the playing field more diverse. And the ban list is not huge in Yu-Gi-Oh! Anymore either. It has gradually been having stuff come off of it as counters have come out. The problem with Hearthstone is if you ban staple cards, you have to play a specialized deck. You have to. You're forcing yourself into the scenario with Yu-Gi-Oh! You have to play archetypes, but they have a rotation as well. So it's very easy to fall behind. It's so dumb. You can lose cards that you needed from other sets that made the archetype work if support was in it, because they'll spread support archetype throughout multiple sets instead of doing it all in one. So you can't even make the archetype correctly. But still, when you're playing that archetype, you're going to play the best one because net decking law. You're not going to try and figure something out yourself, and it's probably going to be horribly imbalanced because it's Blizzard. This is what happened with Secret Paladin, where it's been at its absolute worst.
Do the developers interact at all? Like, publicly interact like the way they purport to in WoW?
I avoid those forums like the plague, dude. I have no idea. I've looked at them a few times and left after 2 pages. I prefer to get it from third-party sites and only look at blue posts that have announcements. So I do not know. They don't seem to be nearly as interactive with the community as your class designer, for instance. I don't see nearly as much stuff we're talking about when they talk about it there.
I'm not sure if having to interact with Celestalon makes me happy or sad. Because every time I see him write, it just shows me how little he knows about what he's designing. I'm not sure which is worse.
Unfortunately, in Hearthstone, because of the way the game's designed, and this is where the game designed that I knew would be a problem. I tried to deny it for a while, but in the back of my mind, I knew this would be a problem. And the fact that we have a cycle of nublets that haven't played card games before, because it's a free game, and it's fairly, it's polished. It's a polished game, just not mechanically as far as the gameplay is concerned. But it looks pretty, it sounds pretty, it's fun to play at first. We get a cycle of nublets coming in, stroking Blizzard's ego all the time on this. And back when we started, Magic was obviously way more popular than Yu-Gi-Oh!, so they went with the rotation format. We're like, okay, please add a ban list later if you can. And when we told them that, and the ban list players that favor stuff for card games like this, where stuff stays on the board a lot longer, they did, but they completely ignored the part where we said, use it to fix the meta and keep it diverse. That's what we said. We said you need to ban problem cards. We did not say you had to ban staple cards. No card game bans staple cards.
I think that it's quite plausible that they don't know the difference.
It's entirely... It should be a bright neon sign in their face. Hey, look, everybody is playing the Paladin that pulls all the secrets out of the deck. Maybe we don't have to ban the Paladin to keep the deck alive, but we could get rid of a couple of the most powerful secrets or limit them down to 1. That might fix it. It would still be viable, but it would not be broken.
I think that what they're angling at is that they don't want to have a conventional ban list. They definitely don't want a limitations list. They are probably not happy about having a rotation. I think that their angle is that they want to keep things brain dead simple, and when they put something in their Hall of Fame or whatever it is, it's probably because they're trying to strike some non-existent middle ground between banning a card and not banning a card. They don't want people to feel like they've had a card banned, but they want to ban a card. But since it's not technically banning a card, they aren't targeting the right cards because they've got some sort of weird cack-handed way of handling it.
Yeah, and because of the archetype nature of the game right now, it's very easy to tell Jade Lotus is broken. All the Jade Lotus cards are bad. They have a mechanic where they do something, you summon a golem. And every time you do something that summons a copy of that golem, it gets stronger. So it sleds your board, and it gets you ever-increasing value the more you use it. And it gets out of hand. They know it's broken. They could patch the game if they really, really wanted to, which is what everybody was very excited for when we saw a TCG like this. Like, they can just patch it because it started as a card game on the computer. This would be wonderful. They could tone it down. They didn't do that. That's the biggest mistake they made. They could have avoided this whole ban list rotation problem if they did that, but no. They instead decided to leave it alone. So it's not going to ever hit that Hall of Fame, even though it's so dominant right now that they comprise something like 80 to 90% of the meta above rank 10. 10 to 1 and Legend are entirely filled with just Jade Lotus variants, last I checked.
One of the interesting things about the phenomenon that I've noticed is that every time that there's a PC card game on Steam, the reviews will be clogged with people showing up to say how much better Hearthstone is.
Yeah, and this is the nublet nature of Hearthstone. We get so many influxes of nublets that are always coming in the door. They're just going to come and praise Blizzard everywhere. So the game always stays #1 rated on iOS. Blizzard's getting constant praise for their game from people that don't know how to make card games. As soon as these people play for 3 months, if they really like the game, they're going to hit a wall. And then you're not going to be able to play the game anymore. You know, not everybody's insane with microtransactions and games they're excited for, like I am. Anybody want to buy a $2,000 League of Legends account? I have PAX TF.
Well,
Yeah.
they might hit a wall, or alternatively, they will go online and look up a net deck and then join the crowd of people using the same deck.
And they will use the budget version of the big deck. And they'll just keep buying packs trying to fill out that deck. And then rotation happens, which is where this is a problem. You cannot have big archetypes in a rotation. I've been trying to build to this. You cannot do rotation style with archetypes. It does not work. It worked in Ravnica because they did it different. What I mean is, specifically, you cannot dedicate half of a set to one archetype. Yu-Gi-Oh! Can get away with this because Yu-Gi-Oh! Never rotates anything out, so archetypes numbers only keep growing.
Every block in Magic was designed to come with its own set of archetypes, and occasionally they would be reusing ones from the past. Like, zombie horde armies have shown up multiple times across multiple different blocks, but they are never the mechanic for a set.
When I'm saying archetype, I mean something specific in the zombie horde archetype. It would be like vampire zombie horde archetypes.
Well,
They
have
what I'm thinking.
they had two different approaches in, say, Innistrad. They had blue black zombies, and I can't remember what the other one was. I think there was another one. But like, if you look at vampires, there were both black vampires and red vampires, and they both worked differently. But you could use them together if you wanted. But the fact is that a given set will have multiple of these sort of core strategies scattered throughout the set. There's a complete set of archetypes for the block that you can play.
Yeah.
Like this is the win condition you're aiming for in the crude game plan that you're likely to use for this color or color combination in this set, and it's like that for everyone. And you see a similar thing in Weiss Schwarz, like a given. Weiss Schwarz is more like a hybrid between the Magic model and the Yu-Gi-Oh model, because there will be usually a couple of key mechanics show up a lot in a particular set. Like Madoka and Bakemonogatari both use a lot of memory stuff. Like you can put things in memory and then recall them later. That's something that doesn't exist at all in Project Diva. Project Diva doesn't use it, but Project Diva also has the ability to snipe individual cards, which only really exists in Project Diva. And they're divided up like that. But there is more than one. There is usually a handful of archetypes per set that you can build around, but they consume quite a large portion of that set. So it's sort of partway between Magic, where Magic usually has as many as 5 or 6, in Ravnica 10 different archetypes in a set, whereas
Blizzard has 3 at most.
Yu-Gi-Oh has very limited numbers per set of really practical archetypes you can actually play. And I wouldn't surprise me if Yu-Gi-Oh managed to release entire sets that didn't have any practical archetypes.
You usually get Yu-Gi-Oh! You do get your bunk archetypes sometimes, but you usually get 2 big archetypes per set that come out. You'll usually get a lot of support for older archetypes that are, random stuff, like Battery Man that was released 10 years ago got random support 10 years later. They do that all the time. Gladiator Beast from 15 years ago got random support too. And this happens every pack. So you get your support cards to buff up the old archetypes that have fallen behind as well, so they come back into rotation as well, which is really good. And then you get the rando cards and the tech cards and the deck, and the $500 Solemn Judgments that everybody needs a copy of because it's a generic trap. But every card game has one card like that in the pack that you got to shell out an arm and a leg for. So even Magic has that.
Whether or not you can move an archetype back into the meta in Weiss Schwarz more or less depends on whether an animator's going to make a new series or a game's going to release a new entry in the franchise, so they've got an excuse to do another set.
I have played a whopping 2 games of Weiss Schwarz at my local store once on one day. I've
had next to no opportunities to play it as well, but I just love the game in an abstract sense. Like, I think it is the most interesting CCG that I've ever seen in terms of sheer mechanics are different to anything else that I've ever played.
I just like the art. I like anime. I like the anime. I like character association. That's the only reason I like the game. I'm kind of indifferent to the gameplay, honestly. It is different and it is fun, but I'm more interested in the fact, hey, look, I get to play Kanji and Naoto. I can ship.
I like the fact that the game has a proper sort of pacing to it that is different to any other game, and you can't ever rush anybody down. Like, because I almost always play red black or red black with occasionally I play blue black in Magic. So it's completely different to what I normally play because you can't really stomp anybody down. You can try if you're playing a lot of yellow cards to really go for the face, but if you don't pace it perfectly, you're going to end up making things a lot worse for yourself very quickly.
Yeah, I'm the exact opposite, as we've talked about. I play control decks almost exclusively, very slow decks, so playing Weiss Force was not much of a change for gameplay pace.
Well, the thing is that in Weiss Wars, though, you can't really control your opponent. Like, you can't control them by direct interaction very easily, even if you run a lot of red. You can't really directly control. And
yeah,
what you're supposed to really be controlling is probabilities. You're supposed to be manipulating. In all cases, control is done by manipulating the contents of your opponent's deck and other parts of the field. Like, you don't try and control what's on the field directly, because what's on the field directly is not really interactable by any method other than combat, unless you're playing very specific red decks, which are very good at shooting particular cards. And Diva has some green cards that are also very good at taking cards out of play. But it's sort of it became an archetype, but it was originally quite a niche strategy.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to in Weiss Force because you have the perpetual danger of the deck itself that could cause a problem at any moment. Whereas in other games, you have to worry about what they could do with their hand. That's the number of options they potentially have. That's it. And what's on the board.
Yeah. The thing is that you can't get something out of somebody's deck and keep it out of their deck in Weiss Wars. Like, if you kill something, you're just giving them a chance to get it back later. You'd be better off stalling it out if you can.
And yeah, depending on the type of card, it is a deeper game than a lot of TCGs, especially ones where the traditional control-based archetype would work. I do like it. I think it's fun to play.
If there was
but
ever
I haven't been
anybody
able
to
to
play
get into
with.
it. We should get webcams set up over a table somewhere. We could play it over Skype or something.
Yeah.
I still have my deck sitting in the thing somewhere. We should set that up to do something. We keep saying we're going to do a lot of things. We should sit down and have a meeting and actually do some of these things we say we're going to do and record it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it will be an opportune time to do that type of thing once I have a stable employment, because then although I will have less free time in that scenario, at least I will know when that free time is, more or less.
Yeah. But yeah, I have intermittent spurts of free time that last a week to 2 weeks, depending on. Well, stop free time. Still have to go to work.
Anyway, what's next on the news docket?
Oh, we're bad at tangents. I've stopped you once and you've stopped me twice now. Okay, let's see. We're still on Blizzard, so we're gonna talk about Overwatch. So this will be quick.
Yeah.
This one's not nearly as long, but yeah. I might write an essay on why the ban list is bad, by the way, mixed with the rotation system in Hearthstone, instead of talking about it because I keep getting distracted on it. But yeah, okay. Let's see. So Overwatch. Blizzard has been trying forever to keep the drop rates of the loot boxes you get in Overwatch completely out of your sight. You're not supposed to know. I was absurdly lucky. These numbers do not reflect the loot I've got. I'm sorry, I have 5 billion legendary skins, and I've only sunk like $40 in the game. But yeah, they finally gave us the numbers. So the loot boxes in Overwatch, for those that don't know, which should be next to no one, but Vol probably has forgotten because it's been a while. They're a box that you can buy with real money. They're fairly cheap for buying digital content, but it's still randomized. They're not as big of a ripoff as Hearthstone packs. But you get 4 items that pop out of them, and they have a chance to be the WoW colors of rarity up to legendary. You can get a white piece of trash that you don't need and probably have another copy of. You can get blue stuff. You can get, which is not very interesting either. You can get epic stuff, which is usually a skin that looks pretty okay, or a voice line or something. And then you get legendary skins and legendary voice lines or whatever. 99% of what's in the legendaries is skins that look radically different and change the character model and stuff. So those are the ones everybody wants. So they gave us the number. So China got mad. And they're like, you can't do that in China. It's against the law. You have to tell us what's in the loot boxes and the proportions. Otherwise, it's gambling in their eyes. And that's not legal. So to comply with Chinese law, they finally caved and said, okay, here you go. And this is how the loot boxes work. You are guaranteed to get at least one blue item, period. We knew that already. That was easily found in testing. On average, a player will receive an epic purple item or skin every 5.5 boxes, which is not that bad. That's like $5, if that, in US dollars. And they will receive a legendary item every 13.5 boxes, which sounds about right for the game. So, yeah, I was way luckier than that, and a few other people were too. So we're not even sure that number's correct. It feels higher to a lot of us.
Well, I'm sure there are lots of people for whom it feels like, I wish it was that high.
Yeah, I did have my binary look flipped to on at the time I opened packs, so... Oh dear. So yeah.
I wonder if they're going to keep it the same in the US. I suppose it depends on whether or not you can, if you can play on US servers from China under a US account. I guess they have to keep it the same. This is the sort of thing that Blizzard hates more than anything else, because it's a deviation from their grand vision that they can't get away from because it's law.
Yeah. Oh, Blizz. But yeah, that's the thing that's happening. It was on the docket, so we have a few more things to cover. We talked about Blizzard enough on the show, I think.
Right.
I'll one day have a coherent discussion about the Hearthstone ban list and rotations. One day I won't get tangented by it and get distracted because there's so many things wrong with it. Okay, let's see. I'm trying to scroll up. I'm talking to buy time. Oh yeah, and you get free packs with the Hearthstone thing too if you log in right now because of the anniversary thing. If you want 3 free packs. Okay, let's see. Valve, we have to talk about this. Otherwise, I'd say we're done. Okay. We absolutely have to talk about this.
Okay. Yep. Go ahead. Say what your take on it was. You're the one who found the thing.
Yeah, there are 2 articles, so I got to find out where I stuck both of them. Okay. So the first thing is a good thing. So it's half good and half we're going to absolutely explode. Okay. So Valve has decided to release Steam support stats to users. What this means is you will be able to see how many people have downloaded a game over a certain period of time. I don't know if it goes back forever in the game's history or not. But for a given value of what they have as at least 3 months, you can watch the download figures for a game. This is a thing that's coming. There's a few other things that are jargon that I didn't see. I'm trying to find them because I don't remember what it was. Yeah. But basically, they're giving information on sales by doing that, is the point. Because usually, if something gets downloaded, somebody bought it just then. So it's a fairly accurate representation of how many sales the game made. But yeah, they've been trying to hide this forever too, but they finally caved and did it. I'm not entirely sure why, but they did.
I can only assume that there was somebody putting pressure on them, and the party that is most commonly responsible for this lately has been the Australian Consumer Commission, but I'm not quite sure why they would be concerned about this. But I mean,
this is a good thing though. It's consumer information that can be used. It's more information for the consumer. It can't be Australia. They only do dumb stuff. They probably did it in a dumb way.
Well, I mean, they're the reason that the refund system got implemented, which is
also a good thing.
It has been a good thing mostly, except apparently that there are a few problems. There have been a few problems lately, and this is a brief tangent, but I don't have much to say about it. Regarding games, particularly VR games, because VR games are basically tech demos at this point, right? Because VR technology is unbelievably primitive. Mm-hmm. And as a result, a lot of VR games are very short. So there has been sort of a spate of people buying VR games, completing them, and then returning them because they're so short that you can do it in the time that the refund is available.
Yeah, optimally.
So a lot of these sort of like startup VR developers are basically making no money.
Yeah, that's not good for VR itself. But I mean, they're not putting out products. I would spend if they're like under 10, if they're like $10-15, that's one thing. But I've seen some really high priced ones, and they're not very long either. And they're effectively tech demos, so I can't feel too bad for those devs.
I mean, I understand that point of view, but it's going to have. You know, it's going to have a cost in the end.
Yeah. Do you care about the individual consumer more on this particular issue or the company?
Well, it's not about
because you're
caring
not
for the
getting a good
company. It's
product.
about caring for the technology in a sense, like because
Oh yeah,
there's simply nobody will develop a long, expensive project unless a short, inexpensive project can be successful.
yeah.
So they're going to need to somehow make sort of a minimum length threshold before they can actually get kicked off at this point. That's what it looks like anyway.
In an optimal world, the way they would do that refund system is every single company out there would be required to put in an accurate estimate of how long it will take to beat their game, and you give them like 20% of the game before they can refund it.
So a lot of the games, like I mean, sure, and a person who is conscious of the amount of money they're spending is not going to spend a lot of money on a very, very short game unless they have a particular affection for some part of it, say that's a licensed game or something. Like I think of, like, there was a Rick and Morty one that came out recently, and it seems to be a thing that a lot of people are fanatical about for whatever reason.
Watched half the first season, don't get it.
I don't get it either, but there are a lot of people who love it. So I mean, maybe they'll buy the Rick and Morty VR game. But I think that there are a lot of people who are just interested in playing with the thing, and they will buy at that price. It's like
there are good 2-hour experiences that are worth it.
A
Not many,
saleable
but there
thing.
are.
Like people know that, oh well, this is just going to be basically a toy, but it looks really cool, so I want to play with it, and they are going to buy it legitimately. But I don't think that they're a big enough group of people to prop up a new technology like this. I think that generally speaking, somebody needs to devise, and I think that this will be one of those things that is developed in terms of a revolution in the way these things are coded. Even that somebody will devise an efficient way to code these things, which would handle a lot of the difficult parts of VR as some sort of cheap licensable middleware or something like that.
It's something like, not VR engine's the wrong word, but kind of like an engine for a game, but for VR, that people could just load up and do stuff in much easier.
Yeah, because I think that they need to reach a critical mass of gameness before they're going to be popular, because most of them are toys right now, right? Like they're a small environment that you can doodle around and do all sorts of things. Like, did you ever play any of those sort of edutainment story type games when you were young?
Plenty of them on the PC, like the Greats
and that sort of thing.
Math Blaster, and yeah.
No, I mean the adventure ones that are sort of like Monkey Island.
Oh yeah, there was one. A Haunted Island one I did. I forget what it's called. It's like 4th grade Haunted Island when I was in 3rd grade. I played that.
Yeah, but I think that most of the VR stuff that comes out is sort of like that. There are a few environments, and you can basically click and play with everything, and it will have some animation or other. Like most of the VR stuff is sort of in that vein of simplicity at this point, and I think that it's not really going to move beyond that until somebody develops technology to make moving beyond that cost effective. Because I think advanced projects seem to be really, really difficult to do. And honestly, I think that probably they aren't the way forward for the technology in the short term. I think probably things like the new Resident Evil is, where it's basically you're using the technology to provide an immersive experience, but it's not really that integral.
It's an enhancement to what could already be a good game, is a big seller on that too. And that shows a lot for what needs to be done with this tech. They need to make really good games that can be played without VR and use VR to enhance it first before they start VR exclusive stuff, I think.
Yeah.
And that might get it to sell. Anyway,
back on topic.
Yes. And also that ideal world I mentioned will never happen. For many reasons that we won't get into because tangents. Okay. So yeah, good idea. I like this. I like giving the consumer more information in general. I don't really care how it got out here at this point. More information for consumers is good. I actually use that information.
It sounds like it'll be particularly good for games that have a hefty multiplayer component, so that you can actually discern if there's, likely to be an active community at this point based on how many people are being brought into it.
That's another thing. You can see the bandwidth used by games. That was the other important thing. I couldn't find it on the page. You can see the bandwidth used by particular games, so you can see which games are active right now, which didn't die off. If a game came out a year ago and has a niche community, if it's still got 20,000 people playing it and you just didn't know, you can see that on the Steam stats by looking at the bandwidth.
Well, it's good. It's good.
It's good. This is a great thing. Now, Valve, that was very nice. Now I hate you. This is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. So I'm gonna not name somebody, but I'm gonna tell you why this is one reason this is a bad thing with the story first. Last Christmas, I sent gifts to everybody like I do every year. There was a Christmas list of 10, and the people that made the 10 got gifts. So people I talked to the most were on the list. I sent one to a certain person. He said, "You don't have to get me anything. Send it back." I'm like, "What?" So the game got stuck in my inventory. I told him to shut up and take it. I already paid for it and shoved it down his throat, and he finally took it. I don't care if you never play it. It's Christmas, dang it.
I think I've got a spare copy of Higurashi somewhere because like multiple people tried to buy it for me at the same time, and I managed to regift some of them, but I think I still got one left over.
So yeah, everybody was broke last year. I was the only one that did a big Christmas list, I think. But yeah,
I'm still living on instant noodles, man. So
yeah. Let's see. So Steam, without an announcement, decided they're going to change the gifting system, and they're nerfing it pretty hard. It might be justifiable, but I don't know how big this threat was. We'll talk about that at the end. So what they're doing, Steam, you can, as it works now, like we said before, if they reject your gift, it bounces back, it goes into your inventory. Okay, that's fine. That's a perfect system. It doesn't go into your inventory anymore. We are assuming from the vague information they've said about it, it just fizzles or something, or you get a refund or what? I don't know.
It can't possibly just fizzle. Like it has to result in being a refund or something. Because I mean, they already have the Australian Consumer Commission all over their ass. Like,
well, that's what I meant by fizzle. It just gives you your money back and disappears, and the transaction goes poof.
But the thing is, it's not going to though, is it? It's going to put it in your Steam wallet, which is not something anybody wants.
Right. That's the other thing. So while spending for Christmas, we cannot use that money to go buy something for somebody in real life if we've already got everybody else to accept their stuff. You know, I suppose we could rebuy the game and tell the person to shut up this time, but it's a much lengthier process, and there's less incentive to do so. But still, that's not the main issue. The other issue is Vaul's issue, where you get multiple copies of a game because it's gift time and you get them. These are the biggest issues. You can't, because the games don't come into your inventory anymore, you can't just re-gift them to other people and it's no loss to you. You have to go do a whole lot of work, and it's horribly inconvenient. So that's the first big problem. All games that are in your inventory right now are still fine. Games that are not are in the future as of this change, I think it's already live. They can't go into your inventory if it gets rejected. So they will probably just give you a Steam wallet refund. They don't say here, I don't see it anyway in the article about if that's what happens, but I assume that's what happens.
It sounds like the most likely outcome, given the information we have access to.
Yeah, that's where it goes. I'm sure it's somewhere, but I haven't looked around the internet. I didn't even know this happened until we looked right before the show. It just happened today or yesterday. But yeah, it's a thing that happened. There's another part to it, though. In regions, as we often complain about on this show, the West US is one of the cheapest regions to buy games digitally or otherwise. With Steam from now on, if a game, they don't tell us the threshold. We'll have to find it calculated somewhere. I might do this and bring it to you next week. I'll try to remember. Once it's past a certain percentage above it in cost in another region, so like for Vault, a lot of new games cost $90-ish more plus dollars. From what I understand, it's like 90 to 100 for a new game down there.
Often, sometimes more.
Yeah, and games in the US will often launch at 60, and though they take quite a bit longer to go down in the US, they go down by a full $20 even online, and will quickly hit 40, if you just wait 4 months. And it'll gradually go down as years tick by as well. If there's a significant enough price difference between your region and a friend's, you cannot gift them any game if you're on the lower end of the price scale. So you can't gift what's $40 in your region to somebody that has a $120 game. They can still gift to you their $120. They can spend $120 on a $40 game, but I don't know anybody that's going to do that. So that's how the new gifting system works. It works exactly the same, except a lot of stuff's been nerfed.
I'm deeply unhappy about this. I mean, I know why they did it. I mean, it makes sense in a sense for them to do it, but it does not make me in any way less offended that they did.
Yeah. And
in fact, I am gravely offended.
we use gifts a lot, especially in the VTW community that grew up in the extension communities that have since branched out. Gifting at Christmas is a thing. It's a thing we do. Gifting at birthdays is a thing a lot of us do. This is a problem.
Yeah, this basically like, and it seems to me that they do run a non-zero risk of losing money on this. Because
Yes.
I will I may not be in a place that has cheaper games than elsewhere, although the games have in fact been cheaper for me than Fern before. That's not
Yeah.
so much anymore because they've normalized a lot of that stuff, but it used to be the case. I will not be able to buy certain games for people now, and somebody in America is even less likely to be able to buy certain games for certain people, and they may in fact just not buy that game and buy a cheaper one, meaning that Steam's cut will be lower, or they may decide on a different gift and not give any money to Steam at all. And this is sort of curious to me because it seems fairly logical to presume that Blizzard is running, not Blizzard, Steam and Valve are running a fairly significant risk here, which makes me think that maybe there's somebody putting pressure on them to do this.
Yeah, because what I assume from what's been kind of listed as the reason isn't a very good one because I don't think this market is very big. I have never seen anyone talk about it. So my perception could be wrong. I don't have any numbers. But what they're trying to, quote, fix with this is Steam titles in easy to buy countries that are cheap, like mine, will buy them, stick them, gift them an account, have the account bounce it back, and leave it sitting in their inventory. And they will then sell this copy of the game as though it's inventory in a store to a person that's lower on the pecking order of good prices. So I will buy a game for $60, bounce it to an account that I don't care about, and tell that account to reject it, and it sits in my inventory. I then set up a store on the internet somewhere with a web page that says, I'll sell you this game for $75. That's a $15 discount. I get a $15 profit for doing nothing.
Yeah, it seems like there should be, I don't know, some way of doing detection software for that behavior. Like if you see there is an account which has a long string of records of distributing tons and tons of games to a whole vast variety of different people from different places, like maybe you could put an account on notice and keep an eye on it if you see it doing that kind of thing. But it seems to me that capturing these people to
really
squeeze a little bit of extra money out of them doesn't really seem like worth undercutting your own gifting market.
Especially like the above example that you started on. Like, let's say you actually wanted Higurashi, it was on your wish list, and I tried to get it to you at Christmas. Oops, it actually passes the threshold. It's $5 here, but it's $8 over where you are. I can't send it to you because that's a 30%, more than a 30% jump. Like, what?
The other thing is that, and this is a minor note, but one that just occurred to me, so I will mention it nonetheless, is that their currency conversions don't follow actual currencies at all. Like they are sort of fixed points, meaning
that's
that
the other problem.
Their threshold is not necessarily even going to be right.
Especially if it's universal across all regions, because nobody's at the same point of value as the U.S. dollar, which I assume is what we'll call it the Steam base prices, and that's what they're basing these metrics on, is how much more a game costs relative to the U.S. dollar. It would be the easiest way to do it. I sincerely doubt they got a guy that crunches out every time they change the current rate of exchange, market exchange for video games every time it changes in every country. There's not a guy that's saying, okay, the New Zealand dollar and the Australia dollar are worth how many US dollars? So a US person can only spend 25% of what their dollar's worth. Okay, it's 60 for them. There's nobody doing that. I guarantee it. This is going to be a flat thing that's simple and easy for them to look at. That's not good. That's in fact really bad. It could accidentally help you in a few cases, but it means it's going to be inconsistent at best, or just burn you harder at worst.
Yeah, it seems like such a strange move that doesn't have a lot of logic that is transparent to it. Like I can't see the reasoning, and that sort of confuses me.
I suppose it is true the majority of Steam users do not use the gifting service. I would say if I had to guesstimate, 75% of people have never gifted a game. But for people that do, this is a huge issue. And was this problem really worth fixing?
Well, the thing that's it's worth noting though is that people who do gift games are people who spend more money on Steam than people who don't gift games, generally speaking.
That is true. So they are angry. They're a big fish with this. And even then, these things they were worried about, these gray market sites for Steam games, it's very strange to think about. But these gray market Steam sites, they still gave Steam money. They just lost a cut of the maximum profit they could have got.
Yeah, like it's sort of like it seems like a case where, well, it's technically their property to do what they like with. It's a quirk of their license agreement that you can't do that, and to actually make a point of persecuting, or perhaps we should say prosecuting, that particular condition seems like a strange thing to pick, given that there are other problems to deal with.
Especially since this can blow up in their face. I mean, we may just wind up gifting, if the price threshold is too small, I may have to find another way to do Christmas for the Aussies and the New Zealanders. Steam ain't going to get money if I can't send people games. So they've actually lost a full sale. And I guarantee losing the number, I'm going to go ahead and say it, I bet losing the number of full sales like that by having someone go elsewhere to send games or send whatever they want as Christmas gifts is going to more than account for the money they make by killing these gray market sites.
Yeah, I think that the strangest thing is that what Steam functionally is an international gaming service. It seems very normal for people to have friends online that they want to send gifts to, and what's the best way to send a gift to a friend who's in another country? Oh, it's to get them a game on Steam.
It has been the staple for at least 5 years. I don't know. It's every Christmas. I used to brag to everybody about just get a Steam account. How come you don't get a Steam account? Everybody that has it, and I'd point to the people that do, we all do Christmas really easy. Now, that's going to get a lot harder now. And I imagine this will turn up as a problem. We won't really know until we try to gift to somebody that's out of the region. Or when somebody announces the threshold finally. But this ain't good, I don't think. I think it's a dumb move. They're in their legal right to do so. Yes, the gray market was doing bad things, and they were right to try and fix it. But that ain't how you do it.
Steam have generally been very successful at business, which makes me think that this is... It doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, surely they wouldn't do something that this daft. There just doesn't seem to be enough in it for them. There's not enough upside. So it seems that there must be the hand of some other force involved here.
There's only two things it could be. It could, if somebody was putting pressure on them because reasons, it could be legal reasons in a country, or it could be just some dude that was really pressuring it for some reason. Or it could be that the gray market was way bigger than we thought. But I'd never heard a word about it. And we follow Steam pretty religiously.
I've heard a lot about it. And it has caused severe problems lately. Because in a lot of cases, they deal in stolen goods as well, and stolen keys.
I see.
And I think that that's the most likely vector that they want to clamp down on this. Because if they are basically ending up being a vendor of sorts, a proxy vendor for stolen property, that could get them in some pretty serious legal argy-bargy if they aren't paying attention.
Yeah, and killing those type of things is a real big deal. More so than just the money not going to you. It is, I have had, the key gen was cracked for Alice, back when I bought it on Steam, and I had to sit with...
You didn't, and so didn't you get that on Origin or something?
Here's what I had to do. I have a copy sitting in my Origin inventory because of this. I had the game in my Steam library. I bought it on Steam on the Steam sale for super cheap. I tried to boot up the game and play it, and it wouldn't work. It wouldn't take the CD key. I figured out that was the problem after enough Googling. So I got on the horn with Steam support, which doesn't exist, so I never did that. And then I went and got on the horn with Origin support, since the game is technically an Origin game. It's just also on Steam. I had to argue with the guy for 2 hours to tell him I just bought your game on Steam and this license key does not work at all. So can you just give me another license key? It's like, well, it can. Hang on. So he doesn't understand me. And so he gives me a copy of the game on Origin when I give him proof of purchase. And he gives me a CD key. So I punch the new CD key in, and it works fine. And the only way that can happen is if the thing got key cracked and somebody punched it in, and it just happened to be the number that my keygen randomized to.
I see.
That's the
Well,
only possible way it could happen.
you're a thief. You're a thief.
I haven't given that copy to anybody. It's still sitting in my Origin account. I can't exactly steal something from a service that doesn't exist. Nobody uses Origin.
Really, it's that bad? Like, I don't know. I've never followed it. I don't own anything on Origin unless they give you stuff for free. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there was literally nobody on Origin anymore.
Yeah, this is unfortunate because big mistakes like this, if it does turn out to be a colossal explosion, nobody can learn from it except for Steam. This is where competition is also important. We talk about this a lot, capitalism, and all that. This is where we need other companies and markets. This will be one of the few cases, actually, because Steam is a pretty big exception to the competition rule. But for the most part, this is where I do wish there were other good distributors so they all could learn from this. But that doesn't exist. Otherwise, Steam's pretty okay. It's one of the markets that's safer as a pseudo-monopoly market, because of the way it performs.
Well, because they're effectively they're a vendor which takes a small cut. Like they take a very small cut. Like they skim such a small amount off the top that they tend not to cause a great deal of harm to the market. But
if there was another thing, we could go to it. We could use it. We could gift our games through that, or we could, if it was just not working because of this change, and they would learn.
At risk of making this a political show with our capitalism ho, I've always thought it was kind of funny how nearly all gamers in the modern gamer generation, they're nearly all socialists. But as soon as games become involved, they become capitalism ho for the exact duration that we're talking about games. Because they know instinctively that they would, if there were more people selling them, they would become better and cheaper.
Yeah, the amount of people that claim to be socialists and are actually pro-competition doesn't make any sense to me. These people don't actually know what these words mean, dude. We've been over this.
I think that's deliberate, though. I think that people who are legit socialists through and through avoid letting other people know what that word actually means.
I don't see them going out of their way to explain it. Probably because they don't have to. It just feels good and they don't think about it. But people don't know what terms mean anymore. People will throw out random words and say them, and that does not help discussion. People don't know what they believe. That doesn't help discussion. I've had a discussion with 2 people on the opposite side of the political spectrum that was fairly intelligent, ever, in my life. That's getting pretty old now.
The thing that concerns me is that they think the exact same thing.
I know, and that's what's really scary. And the fact is, I've only had 1 or 2 on my side as well. This is not a bipartisan issue. This is a global issue that nobody understands what they believe and nobody understands what words mean. I mean, if you don't know a word, you go, what does that mean? You ask the dude you're talking to if you can't Google it fast enough. I do this to Vaul all the time. Like, people need to figure out what they believe, and people need to learn what words mean. If we could do that, we could communicate.
The education system's garbage in the West, though, these days. It's more interested in ideologies than in teaching things.
I know. That's why I'm so happy I'm self-taught. It's probably the reason I'm the way I am is because I'm self-taught.
At any rate, we have managed to turn it into the political show because that's what
we dodged it. I turned it into a nonpartisan issue. It is not the political show.
Without Fern around, though, we're always in danger.
Did we each pull each other out of it once, this show, and then we did the last one where we saved it? Okay.
Fern, come back.
We need you, Fern. This is why when the first thought I had when the show popped into my drunken head was we need a third guy.
We're rapidly approaching 3.5 hours.
All right, we're going to get out of here, folks. That was the big things this week. Because it's on YouTube, none of y'all will see this anyway, but we love y'all. So we'll see you next week. Sayonara, bye-bye.